I'd like to call the Bristol Selectboard meeting to order at 7:01. And
recording in progress.
There we go, recording. Overview of Zoom meeting operation and procedures, rules for participation. Mute your microphones, be recognized by the chair, just myself, if you wish to speak. Any additions or changes to the agenda, Val?
Only that I don't think there are any minutes to review tonight.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Okay, here.
Not for lack of effort.
Understood. Public forum. 5 minutes to discuss anything that's not on this evening's agenda. Anyone in person there at the town offices or on Zoom wish to speak? Linda Andrews.
Yes, thank you. Hi, how are you, Ian?
Not too bad, thank you.
Good. I just wanted to make an announcement that the Bristol Democrats are organizing a Bristol Climate Change Forum. And I just wanted to put on your calendar, it's going to be April 13th on a Wednesday at 7 p.m. And Sally Burrell's going to present from the Energy Commission, Kevin Hansen from the Planning Commission, and Jono Chapman for the Conservation Commission. And they're going to talk about what they have done and kind of what they plan to do in the future to address climate change. So I want you all to come. It'll be interesting, I think.
Great. Thank you very much, Linda.
You're welcome.
Anyone else for public forum? Seeing none, we'll move on. Department head roundtable, 5 minutes per person. Let's go around the room. Let's take a look. Sharon, would you mind going first?
Sure, that's fine. Working on overweight permits. Got quite a few of them done today. I did some minutes over the weekend, so there's a couple more there done. Working on the rest of them. Still have to put in all the voters for the town meeting election. We have 60 days, so it's starting to shorten up here. Dog licenses are due April 1st. As you know, taxes are due April 15th. We have a lot of water checks coming in as well, so it's going to be ramping up with just processing money over the next couple weeks for everything. So that's pretty much everything right now that I can think of.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Sharon? Okay, moving on. Meredith, Recreation Department.
All right, so pretty exciting. We were able to bring gymnastics back to Bristol Elementary School and the community. It was received with great success. I had quite a bit of folks on wait list. We made an adaptation to the day and added on a few of the classes so we could accommodate those folks on the wait list. So it was a success, and it's so nice to be able to have gymnastics back for the community. And then on the other part, we have dance class, and that's still going pretty strong. We have another class coming up starting April 4th. We're going to have vacation swim during April break. So that'll be nice. That'll be kind of like what we did for February. So we'll have 2 sessions, session 1 from 8 to 9:45, and then session 2, 10 to 12, well, 10 to 11:45. And that'll be $5 per person per session. And then the clay studio is rocking. Motlock's doing a phenomenal job over there. And the Holly Hall is being rented quite frequently. So things are looking pretty great. We're waiting for the snow to melt again so we can get back out into the parks and clean up all the park areas. And Alex has been really doing a great job making sure that he probably picks up 10, 20 masks when he's out there doing the park cleanup. So that's pretty much in a nutshell.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Meredith? Okay, Taylor, Bristol Hub, welcome back from maternity leave.
Thanks. I'm still on it kind of until May,
but I'm starting to phase in. Today, Meredith and I had a meeting discussing how I'm going to start gradually working. And so doing a bit of work from home, since a lot of what I'm going to be doing is going to be on my laptop, and just a lot of organization. So it's a lot easier when I'm nursing to be home so that I can put the baby in the bassinet or do tummy time, or, balance the things as I'm working on different things. But so I just wanted to say hello to Select Board again and check in. And I'm excited to jump back in and for everyone to meet Arlo when he starts coming around.
Great. It's good to see you again.
See you as well.
Thank you. Anthony, treasurer.
Hi guys. One of the updates that I have is by tomorrow we should be done with the fixed asset audit. I briefly spoken to the auditor and finalized a couple of invoices that I need to submit, but other than that, I think we're in pretty good shape. Other things that have gone on really is talking with the various budget software companies as well. I talked a little bit more to one of them over the weekend, or Thursday night, sorry. It kind of all jumbles together. So I was reviewing a little bit of that stuff. I'm just trying to think if there's any other big news. Looking over the payroll module a little bit and trying to see if we can better organize that, I guess, is another project I've slowly been working on. So other than that, pretty much the same old.
So with the audit, in terms of those fixed assets, is that once you wrap it up, is that done? And then how long until we
the fixed
we get
asset? The fixed assets are the last part. It
Okay.
is going to entirely depend on how quickly they get back to us on that. I haven't heard any more additional information being needed or anything like that from any of the other auditors. So as far as my correspondence with them have been, no news is good news.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. Any questions for Anthony? Okay, Brett, fire department.
Thanks, Ian. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yep.
You can. All right, good news. So just a couple quick updates. I really just wanted to highlight and emphasize the fire department's training program as we continue to roll out kind of our revised training program the last few years, as we continue to move to a competency and proficiency based training program versus time. This past Saturday, we had what we call the quarterly full-scale exercise at the fire station, where we spent 2/3 of the fire department was in attendance, and we spent 4 hours there in real time practicing the skills that everybody has been working on the past 3 months. We reviewed technical stuff the last few months, and then Saturday we had a chance to put those skills to test in more real-time scenarios, as real-time as we can make it. So we thought it was a big success. We got some good feedback from the training, but it's an evolution. It's very different than what we have done in the past, but it's certainly the future of the fire service, and I find it to be a really exciting time. And also, I just wanted to make the board aware that the town of Bristol, we're hosting the last weekend in April, the annual Addison County Regional Fire School. I perhaps mentioned that at the last board meeting, but just in case I didn't, I think it's the weekend of April 23rd and 24th. There should be a significant number of firefighters from around the county and state who will be participating in various types of training in the area. So that's kind of what's going on in our world.
Is that anything that the public can be spectacle to, similar to what you did before?
I mean, public is welcome to watch anything. I can't tell you where things will be held. That's all still a work in progress. I mean, some of the classes, as an example, a couple of Bristol members are teaching a basic pumps class, and I know a practical portion of that program will be in another town. So the classroom portion will probably be either at our fire station or possibly over at the high school, which we're working with on utilizing some of their classrooms that weekend. But yeah, certainly if people see something, they're absolutely welcome to stop and take a look and see what's going on.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brett. Any questions for Brett? Okay. In the town offices, I see Bruce back there, police department.
Nothing new.
Okay. And finally, finally, Eric, Public Works Department.
Not much other than the last time, just trying to get the road shaped up and trying to stay ahead of mud.
And dealing with more snow.
Dealing with more snow. That was fun.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate that. Let's take a look. Moving on here. Regular business. Number 1. Consider presentation by Champlin Associates for a wastewater pretreatment alternative, algae wheel. Val?
Yes, I see that Alec Disler is here from Champlin Associates. I'm not sure if another person from
Val, Algae Will couldn't make it tonight, unfortunately, so I am covering for them. I know, but I got their presentation, so I will work through it. I should be able to answer any questions that come up.
Shall I make you a co-host so you can share your screen?
That would be great.
Trying to figure out how to do it.
All right.
When I click on your name, it just gives me pin as an option. Ian, do you know how to do that?
No. Are too many people a co-host, perhaps?
Can make him a co-host from here, Val.
You're gonna try it?
Yep, it let me.
Interesting.
Good.
Well, it told me that we were made hosts, so I'm not sure what
That's
happened.
why. There you go.
Alrighty. Well, I will share my screen with you guys, and we will get rolling here.
Great. Thanks, Al.
Okay, so let's see. Do you all see Algae Wheel Champlin Associates?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, as Valerie said, my name is Alec. I'm with Champlin Associates. We are first and foremost, we're a pumps and controls company. Our main office is in Essex, Vermont. We do municipal pumps, controls, instrumentation, kind of for all water and wastewater applications. So that's kind of our bread and butter first, is that pumps and controls, how to move water and how to move wastewater. And how to measure that and monitor that. That's kind of what we do. We just opened an office in Maine as well. So we're kind of branching over Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, we like to call, northern New England. But yeah, pumps, controls, we do operations as well. So we manage systems throughout Vermont, whether that's a water or wastewater system. That could be anything from like a trailer park to small towns, and we do all that kind of stuff as well. But what we're here to talk about tonight is water and wastewater treatment, but wastewater treatment in particular. So we branched off from just pumps and controls, those kind of things, to being able to provide a full solution as well for wastewater treatment, from anything from high strength stuff like breweries and dairies to towns and municipalities as well. So yeah, tonight we're going to talk about the algae wheel system. So the algae wheel system is a municipal strength wastewater treatment system. It's been used for small towns, rest stops, community development, small campgrounds, schools, universities, kind of all throughout the U.S. They're based in Indiana. They have treatment systems all throughout the U.S., from Indiana down. They even have stuff down in Mexico. So they're kind of all across the board through there. But they like to call themselves an RAC, or a rotating algal contactor. If any of you have any type of experience with wastewater treatment, you might have heard of something called an RBC, which is a rotating biological contactor. They're similar in the sense that they both rotate, but the RBC comes with some stigma against it, which is fair because the way an RBC works is a giant rotating wheel that is hanging on this, long cylindrical pole with some big motors to turn it. So it comes with a lot of logistical nightmare with trying to fix all that when those big machines break. But with the algae wheel, they are actually all free-floating wheels, as you can see in that picture there, that grow algae on themselves. So it takes the pressure off of that hanging rod system. So you're removing the need for those rotating wheels, those big rotators. You're removing the need for that stress on the hang system as well. So it removes a lot of that operational headaches that come with an RBC. So as I move along, I'll go a little more into how it actually works. But I just want to give you a visual on what it's looking like before we jump in there. So this would be a bird's eye view from it. This is at least a rendering of what it would look like if they do a lot of retrofitting of existing plants as well. So it kind of looks like a giant greenhouse from the outside. And so that's important to think about of a greenhouse factor with this. So the way that it actually treats the wastewater is it uses the symbiotic relationship between algae and bacteria. A nice way to think about it is we're trying to stop the algae wheel from the algae bloom from happening in the lakes. So we're not getting, your gross blue-green algae and stuff that's happening in Lake Champlain, but we're actually going to use that power, that treatment power that happens with the blue-green algae, and put it in a contained environment where we can use its treatment capacity in a contained space and keeping it from moving out and corrupting the environment. So algae is what's going to naturally grow on the outside of those wheels. Through photosynthesis, they're going to discharge oxygen and polysaccharides, which is just sugars. So they're going to discharge oxygen and sugars. And then bacteria is going to grow on the inside of those wheels in those little floating balls you see there. And they are going to dissolve those sugars and consume that oxygen. And they're going to release CO2, which the algae is going to consume again through photosynthesis and discharge the oxygen and the sugars, so creating this symbiotic relationship where one consumes the byproduct of the other. So it's a pretty cool system. So it uses that rotation aspect from the RAC, rotating algal contactor, but it also has what's called an MBBR, which is just a moving bed bioreactor. All that really means is there's some extra spaces in there, extra surface area with those plastic beads that live inside of the wheels for bacteria to grow. So use that relationship between the algae and the bacteria to treat your wastewater. And so for a very basic overview of wastewater treatment, what we're trying to do is get bacteria that will break down the BOD, which is biological oxygen demand. We're trying to get the bacteria to break down the BOD, and all BOD is really a good way to think about it, just food for microorganisms. Good to break down that extra nutrients before it gets into the environment. So what those bacteria need, they need the food, so they need the BOD, but they also need the oxygen, they need the air. So the big problem that happens, the big hurdle for most wastewater treatment plants is how do we get oxygen into the system? So you can think of a lagoon system, which is just a big pond where they have aerators that are just blowing air into this big open water. It's not the most efficient thing in the world, but it's what they have to use. Like with that RBC, the reason you're rotating it is that so the bacteria has a chance to come to not be submerged in the water and have a chance to get the oxygen before it's submerged again, and going through that big rotation. So that's kind of the big problem that a lot of wastewater plants are trying to solve, is how do we get oxygen into the system to make sure our bacteria are alive. Algae wheel completes that. They kind of surpass that by using that mixture of algae and bacteria, where algae is discharging the oxygen. And the way they rotate the wheels is actually with a small bubbling aeration system just below the wheels. So I'll jump back here a little bit. You can kind of see on the left of that image where there's some bubbles coming up. that is a small aeration line that actually gives it enough force to rotate that wheel. So it removes the need of any mechanical solutions to make that happen. It's all just small aerators. Let's move along. Here's a real world example. This is Bristol, New York. Sorry, this is Naples, New York. Naples, New York is in the Finger Lakes in the wine country. I think this is treating either 100,000 or 200,000 gallons a day. So it's a pretty decent sized system that they have going on here. But this is when I visited just maybe a couple months ago. I was driving through the area, so I stopped by, took some pictures. So the outside, we can see it's kind of that greenhouse looking building. And then these concrete pads here, they have a series of tanks. They do some denitrification. They do some clarifying, sludge holding. So they have a pretty complicated system. It doesn't need to be, but that's what they chose to do there. This is the inside of the building. So you can see that there's these rows and rows of these just concrete tanks where these wheels are living in. And each one of those is just another algae wheel system. If we keep going, we can see that these little machines on the bottom here are their blowers. I think each one of these, it's either 1.5 horsepower or 3 horsepower blowers. So fairly small system to get air into all those tanks you see behind it. I'll see if this plays. This is a little video. Well, it might be really loud as well, so FYI. But this just shows the algae wheel system in real time as it's working. You can see how those wheels are slowly turning there from the aeration underneath. That is the guy on the left. The shorter guy is the mayor of Naples. He's like obsessed with the system. He'd love to talk to you whenever you want to talk to him. The guy with the beard is their operator. He is the only operator in the town. And so for any of you that know much about wastewater treatment, having one guy be able to operate an entire system is kind of unheard of. It's especially something on this size where it's close to 100,000 gallons or more per day coming into there. To have one guy who can manage that is it's a testament to how simple the system can be run. And the woman in the back is my wife. She was tagged along with me for there, and she wasn't totally grossed out. So that's another testament to how actually for her it was the best treatment place I could bring her to for her first ever visit. Usually it's like big lagoons or something, and they're just aerating it, so all that kind of stinky smell is pushed up into the air. But this keeps it much more subdued, and the odor is a lot less. So she wasn't totally grossed out walking around. So that was a win for me. But yeah. Anyway, so this guy here in the beard, he's their operator. He's also their town sweeper, and I think he plows as well. So for someone who has that many responsibilities, to be able to run a plant like this, it's just a testament to how simple it could be run. And I'll just kind of skip through. There's more to the video, but it just shows more of the water moving around. This is some data from another treatment system that's out there at La Lumiere School in La Porte, Indiana. That blue line is their BOD coming in. Typically, when you're sizing a wastewater treatment system, you're looking at your BOD coming in and your BOD coming out. BOD is usually the main factor that we're looking at for wastewater treatment. And usually it's whatever is coming in. Residential sewer is usually about 300-ish. And then treatment level is usually somewhere between 30 to below what we're trying to keep as a discharge for coming out of a facility. So we can see here they're getting spikes of upwards of 500 BOD, but they actually have a discharge limit of 10 for their BOD. So they're very consistently getting very close to zero that whole time going through there. Same, this is total nitrogen for them. It's a great system to consume nitrogen as well. So you can see those huge spikes in nitrogen, but they're able to remove that. So I'm just kind of breezing through this, and I'll drop Valerie. I'll send you this presentation as well, so you can ship it out to everyone on the select board, so you can flip through it at your leisure. I'm trying to make sure I hit all the points to keep stay under my time. But for Bristol itself, I think when we were talking last, Valerie, I think we were talking with Alan at Green Mountain Engineering. Green Mountain has since closed, and so you need to find a new engineer, someone like Otter Creek or Aldrin LH, who there's plenty of engineers out there. But at that time, we were looking at an average daily flow of 20,000 gallons per day, peak daily flow of 40,000 gallons per day, with a goal of getting your BOD down to below 20 milligrams per liter. For us to size something to, we just want to make sure that we know what our parameters that we're hitting, whether that's BOD, TSS, nitrogen, phosphorus. There's going to be loads of things that the state will end up giving you for a discharge permit. And it all depends on where it's going to. If it's going to an on-site stream or a community leach field, there's different levels of effluent parameters you'll have to hit. But most treatment facilities in Vermont have a 30-30 effluent limit. So when I say 30-30 or 20-20, 10-10, I'm saying like BOD and TSS. So TSS is total suspended solid. So it's all the little chunks. So usually it's 30-30, 30 milligrams BOD, 30 milligrams TSS. But it just depends on what the state ends up dictating your permit to be. So this was our initial design parameters for Bristol when we were looking at it maybe a year or so ago. 20,000 gallons per day. I think we're looking at doing the heart of Bristol, kind of the town central, and treating there. This would be the expected size of the system we're looking at. So that would be with the algae wheel, 2 algae wheel tanks with one of those greenhouse buildings over top. They also have an option for doing just a cover over top of the tank rather than a whole building. And that would save some space, but you'd probably need an extra shed or something next to it to house those blowers and controls and any other extra, doohickeys you might need as you move forward. But we can see that to treat an entire town, the town center of Bristol, we're looking at about a 40 by 30 foot area there. And so this is a typical flow schematic that algae wheel puts out. You don't have to have all these things, and some of them would not be required for your system. Like I don't think you're going to need that extra anoxic denitrification step, which would be another tank, another recirc that would happen there. But basically what we would want for a treatment system is we want some screening ahead time to catch any solids, any rags, any Barbie dolls that come down the drain. We're going to have a primary clarifier, which would also act as a holding tank. So that would act as some settling, get some more of those solids to settle out. And then we'd move to a pump station. We'd probably bypass that denitrification step altogether, unless your permit has a really strict nitrification level, then we have to look into that a little more. So we would just go from that primary clarifier to a pumping station. The pumping station would lift it into the algae wheel, and then it would gravity through the algae wheel down to a second clarification to make sure that we get out any the additional TSS, those additional solids that we need to get out of there to meet those permits. And then from there, that would discharge to, I think we're looking at an on-site stream, if I'm remembering right. But
No, it's
discharge
a septic system.
Septic system, to a discharge from an on-site septic system.
Right.
And I believe you have some tanks there already. So the goal would be to reuse existing infrastructure as that primary screening and clarification tank. And then we would need a new pump station for that EQ tank. And that's stuff that we as Champlin do every day for municipalities, is pump stations. So we can help you size all those kind of things. And then it would lift it up into algae wheel. And then we'd probably need a new tank for a secondary clarification and sludge holding tank there as well. Yeah, so I kind of breezed through that pretty quickly. Hopefully it made sense. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And Valerie, again, I'll ship this off to you as well, so you guys can all have this in your back pocket. And there's some additional info at the end that kind of shows the relationship between algae and the bacteria and kind of what's growing within that. But that felt a little extra for today. So
In the other presentation that the other folks had last year, you had some visual examples of plants, or not plants, but facilities in other locations, real life examples, and also just kind of punctuated the simplicity of the systems and how easy they are to operate.
Yeah, like, so on that simplicity factor, we'll go back to the video here. Maybe I can pause it at a good spot. What we can see here is, let's say one of these wheels isn't turning, and it's stuck for some reason. Maybe there's too much growth on it and it wasn't able to shear off. When I talk about shearing off, once a day, the blowers are on a ramp up cycle. So they will kick up and blow a little harder, and it'll turn the wheels a little bit faster and help them slough off some of that excess growth out on there. That's on there to allow for new growth, healthier growth, as well as keep the wheels moving. And if, let's say, something happens and one of those wheels stop moving, you can kind of see these little handles here on the side of that. All you do is get a guy on each side. You can turn the handle, unlock it, lift it, bring it to the side, and then from there you can slide the wheel right off and either replace it with a new one you have, or clean it and put it right back on, and make sure that it's spinning freely again. And that all takes about 5 minutes. So it just talks a little bit of simplicity. Yeah.
One of the objectives is not only to pre-treat the stuff that serves the current district, but with this pre-treatment is the opportunity to increase the capacity for more customers.
Yes.
Right now we're limited by those factors, but the facility, the leach field itself can actually handle more.
Yeah.
How would that change the design that you've mapped out last year?
Yeah, so the only change is planning. I think we're always planning for growth. And the cool thing about the algae wheel system is that it is completely modular. So as you grow, you can just add additional rows of those tanks. So let's say, this year we're at 20,000 gallons. Next year, we think we're going to be at 30,000 gallons a day. Great. All we need to do is add another row of that tankage of those wheels, and that should give you the additional treatment capacity as you grow. The only thing that we would want to think about then on that front is just allowing for space for those additional wheels as you grow, whether that be in the building itself, or if you're going with just like the domed cover, allowing for space between tanks. And just allotted space that we can, we're not building right where we're going to put the future growth to be. But to actually add an additional algae wheel tank system, all it really adds is maybe another blower, which we just add into our control system, and add some piping to make sure that the inlet feed pumps are discharging to that system as well. So a little bit of piping, some concrete, and making sure our control system is plugged into the new blowers.
Also in the prior presentation, there was, or maybe this came in the information you sent to us afterwards about the energy use, the energy requirements of this type of facility.
Yeah, I think I have. I wonder if I share it this way. Let me see. I have it up here.
And while you're looking for that, what's the long-term maintenance requirement for these kinds of things? And what kinds of things are going to break? What kinds of things are going to require some heavy-duty maintenance?
Yeah, good question. So on the energy side, we did a little breakdown here for power costs. This was done last year, obviously 3/29/21. But we can see that we have a couple of 3 horsepower blowers that are going on. They're running all day. So it might need adjusted for whatever the current cost is for electricity, but you're looking at somewhere around $4,000 a year in electrical costs, power costs. And then for replacement costs, we are breaking that down a little bit for those filters in the blowers themselves, doing some maintenance on them. The recirculation pumps, doing some maintenance on them, and then if any of the diffusers break, do some maintenance on that. So we estimated you could probably round it up to 1,000. I mean, budget maybe 2,000 for it, just in case something goes wrong. But that was our mocked up annual costs for a biogill. I'm sorry, an algae will system. There's another treatment. There's another high strength treatment system we supply called biogill, but that is not, wouldn't work for you guys here. Yeah, so that was our electrical usage there, and I can make sure I ship this over as well, so you have that fresh. What was the other question? Operational
Long-term maintenance.
long-term maintenance.
Yeah, if something's, what kind of major things could go wrong that require maintenance?
Yeah, good question. So one thing you're going to want to think about just for on the cost side is the labor to manage a system. And that's going to require you to have a licensed operator to be managing the system, whether that's a Bristol employee or it's a contracted operator. Either one's fine. Like we do contract ops all the time. And there are plenty of companies out there that do the same thing. Plus a lot
Does
of
somebody
guys who do
need to
freelancing.
be specifically licensed for this facility, or if we already have a licensed water operator and a licensed sewer operator?
Oh,
do they
then
need
that's probably fine. It's
Okay,
just
they-
whatever.
They don't need
level.
any additional certification to operate this facility.
No, there'll be nothing specifically for algae wheel. It'll just be whatever level this is. You know, if it's a 3 or if it's a 4, then just make sure someone has licensure enough to cover that. But algae wheel specific, they don't need anything like that. So anyway, you have the labor, you have electrical. Those are probably your two biggest costs. First of all, for long-term maintenance on what can go wrong, it's kind of starting A to Z on the entire treatment system. You're probably going to end up having to do upgrades over time of that pump station. Hopefully that should only be 10 to 20 years in the future, having to manage those pumps. But stuff always goes wrong. Stuff can always go wrong, at least, and pumps can fail. So that would be those inlet pumps. There could be minor electrical systems here or there, like floats or level transducers, those kind of things. That could be from $50 to $1,000 fix for some of those kind of things. Just depends on kind of luck of the draw if something breaks or not. With those kind of things, you'll have some screening and make sure that screening is well maintained. So for the most part, the better you maintain a system, the more likely it is to last. So it's hard to guess exactly what's going to go wrong. The wheels themselves for algae wheel, they give them a 25-year lifetime, but they're essentially there to last forever. So they don't expect them to degrade or anything like that in any reasonable amount of time. But they put on them a 20 or 25-year lifespan.
Thank you. Last year, you also, after the presentation, sent us information about construction, a system sized to Bristol. You had some construction estimates.
Yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can dig through it and send it over as well.
Yeah, I think, as I recall, it was in the $200,000 range.
Something like that. I know we had the initial pricing for this system. I think it's probably buried in our communication somewhere, but I think the initial pricing for this was about $250,000.
Yeah.
And that was for the algae wheel system, in addition to the cover with the blowers and a control system for that. What would not be included would be the installation of the entire system or the tanks above, before or behind, and the pump station. And any engineering costs. We're not licensed engineers, so we can't put our PE stamp on anything. But I think that was the initial estimate for the algae wheel part of it itself was about $250,000.
Yeah.
I'd have to get that pricing updated because that was about a year ago. So I don't think algae wheel is going to hold hard to that price, but I can get that updated for you.
Right. So here's a question in the chat. If one wheel gets clogged up, does it stop all of the other wheels? And
Good
also,
question.
is there an alarm Or is it just visual to note that some wheels are not working?
Yeah, good questions. For the first question, no, they're all totally independent of each other. So if one stops turning, all the others on the wheel will. I actually have another video showing one being stuck and all the others working. I can send that over as well. But they all continue to spin, even if one stops. But as for the alarming system, it's all just visual. Visual, seeing if those are turning or not. So that would be on your operator. Just take a quick walkthrough. Should only take a couple minutes to see if things are turning or not. Should be fairly obvious.
Do the wheels have to be pulled and the tanks periodically cleaned, pumped and cleaned, or?
They shouldn't have to with that shearing cycle that's going to happen with those blowers. So once a day, we could even go to twice a day if we need to, if we find that there's excess growth happening. Those blowers are going to ramp up and get those wheels turning a little bit faster to shear off some of that excess growth. And that might just be playing a little bit with that shearing cycle, seeing if we need to increase it or do it multiple times a day. But you shouldn't have to be pulling these off and cleaning them on any regular basis.
What about the tanks themselves? I mean, is there any sediment you got air blowing, there's no sediment or anything in the tanks?
There is a little bit of settlement that's going to happen in the tanks. On the bottom, there's going to be some sludge valves. And so you'll have to desludge some of the tanks every now and then. And you want to bring that back to a separate sludge holding tank. And then from there, that can be pumped out to either a different facility with a sludge press, something like that, where they'll process that, or to a landfill, whatever your setup is going to be.
Okay. Thank you, Alec. We have our Jill from VTUMS, our water operator. She's on this evening.
Yeah.
Jill's she had a couple questions in the chat, but I don't know, Jill, you want to jump in and just give us your thoughts on what you see so far, since you're the one who manages our system?
Yeah, I do manage a few other wastewater facilities that are far more complicated than Bristol's current very small, very basic wastewater system. And I see this as going from what I consider a traditional septic system with septic tanks and a leach field for 34-ish connections to a full wastewater treatment facility, meaning you guys will need power, water, a building. This is a field that has no power. Everything feeds to it through gravity from the existing collection system. So I believe that a study would need to happen that actually looks at the total cost, upfront cost, and the ongoing costs, and how many connected users you would need to add to A, justify helping pay for the cost, and B, need this additional treatment to increase your wastewater treatment facility.
Well, Jill, if I can add to that comment, a few years ago, Green Mountain Engineering did a preliminary engineering study of pre-treatment options to increase the capacity of this system, not only to benefit the existing customers so that they can add more functional capacity in their businesses, more seats in the restaurant, more this or more that, or even additional businesses, but to perhaps expand the district. And that study from 4 or 5 years ago, or plus or minus, studied 4 options. All of them were very high tech. And I think the lowest range of construction just for was over $600,000. And again, very high tech, all kinds of gizmos and stuff, motors and whatever. So anyway, so that's a comparison. And one reason why we're looking at this is because those 4 options were cost prohibitive. And this just came up as a possible alternative.
That was 4 or 5 years ago when I was with Costa.
I mean, I think part of it too is sort of recognizing the demand that we have, or even if we have a demand. I think that would be step number 1. I think any system, and as Jill said in the chat, even a system like this we're up at around 400, 500,000 to be able to have the system itself, the engineering, and everything that we would need to put in. So we're getting close. Yes, it's a not as high tech a system, which could benefit us, but also who are we serving, and as Jill said, can we get enough people using the system to actually justify the change and changing it from a septic system to a full wastewater treatment?
Yeah, and it'd also be nice, yeah, just to understand if there are grants, for instance, that would help pay for it. It'd be great to have lower BOD. It'd be great to have lower TSS. The other facilities that I run, our effluent is far cleaner than what we get from a traditional septic system here in Bristol. We don't have BODs of 500 and 600. We have BODs of 6. But they're full treatment facilities. So, I mean, I come from working for Aldrich and Elliott, so seeing lots and lots of wastewater treatment facilities go through the study, design, construction from very basic to incredibly fancy. And it's sort of like the basic things that get forgotten at the beginning, like there needs to be a water service pulled off of Basin Street to have water to clean these wheels off. A power service pulled off of probably Basin Street. So it's like those development costs are there. And I worry about where would these physically sit, because the leach field is the L shape. There's the road that comes across and the bank is very thin. So I'm trying to picture where like a 40 by 20 or 40 by 40 would even fit on the site without sitting on a leach field or sitting on existing dosing siphon chambers.
Linda Andrews asked, where is the water treatment system located? And the answer to that is it's down behind the Main Street properties, the businesses between the Main Street and the river, off of Basin Street. If you go down Basin Street and you see this big field, that's the downtown septic system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's worth studying this more, but I think the first thing would be to determine whether the demand was there and whether the system that we have is limiting the businesses that we could bring in. I haven't heard of those limitations, but perhaps it is happening. The
Perhaps
second part
next is for the select board at a future meeting to review the preliminary engineering report that Green Mountain Engineering did, because that provides background about why they were even doing the report and their analysis of the demand and the limitations and some of those other things, and also to refresh our memories about what they proposed, what they looked at, and then look at how that compares to what we're seeing right now, and then perhaps decide, okay, if we're going to proceed, what's the next step?
Okay.
Yeah,
Jill, I
the
take
biggest
it
thing-
you're. Go on, Peter.
The biggest thing was getting the BOD down so we could discharge more water.
Mhm.
That's been the, yeah, that's been the goal in any treatment system that we put in.
That makes sense. That's what all the treatment systems I operate do.
Will this system extend the life of the leach fields? Obviously, I don't know how old that is, maybe 25 years old down there.
Yeah, probably.
You know,
30.
it's 25 years old, 30, close to 30.
Yeah.
You know, it's sand and built up in like a typical mound system, I guess, leach field. Would that less BOD going in, more water going in, but BOD is thinner, would this reduce or extend the life of the leach field?
Yeah, I mean, essentially any reduction of BOD coming into a leach field is going to extend its life.
The water would be almost drinkable when it goes in there going through the system.
If you want something to be drinkable, we can do that. Probably not with the algae wheel system, but we can make it happen.
It might be cleaner than surface water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jill, do you know of Alan's the report that was done a few years ago? I assume you've seen that.
Yeah, I haven't read it in a couple years though.
Okay. All right. So maybe we'll all
2018.
Yeah.
we'll all revisit that, and we can put this on the agenda for a future meeting to sort of bring that up again and discuss our options and a way forward.
Mhm.
That sounds good.
And as I was saying before, it was sort of, it's part of, whether the need is there for the downtown businesses, and also looking at the ability to connect other users to actually make it viable and to make it more sustainable. As it is, the water system is something that sort of breaks even for the town in terms of the payments that we get and the cost of the system. Obviously, you don't want the costs to overwhelm the revenue that's brought in. So connecting new users is a positive thing, but it's whether we'd be able to do that given the layout of the town and how our system is implemented.
Yeah, but it also affects current users, customers, I like to say,
Right.
because they're limited in what they can do with their businesses. For example, when the new salon went in on Main Street, I mean that was a consideration of their capacity to do that, and the restaurants are limited in their number of seats.
Well, like Jill said, 500,000 between 35 users isn't gonna fly.
Right,
You
absolutely.
guys need some grant money.
Yeah.
And it's out there. It's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Alec.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Here, I'll stop sharing here. There we go. But yeah, Valerie, I'll shoot you over that info as well, and then you can dish it off to everyone else. Yeah, feel free to look through everything. If you have any questions, give me a call, shoot me an email. Happy to talk through it.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thanks, Alec.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, regular business. Item number 2, East Street and Park Place sidewalk replacement bids. Select a contractor may include deliberation in executive session.
I'm gonna say we move this to executive session.
So,
I just want to point out for our audience that 4 bids, and they range. One reason to have a discussion in executive session is because of the wide range of the bids, from $40 a linear foot to $120 a linear foot, with some other ones in between. So we need to have a conversation about it.
Okay. Do you need a motion to move that into executive session, or just consensus?
I think we're postponing that agenda item until the executive session.
Okay. Moving on. Number 3, consider Gran Fondo application for use of Bristol roads for the annual bicycle event on Saturday, June 25th, 2022.
I don't believe Todd has been able to join us.
Okay, I don't see him.
Yeah. But Bob Donis has. Bob, I did share your email with the select board.
Oh, thank you. I see this as an opportunity to help educate young folks about the safe riding of bicycles.
I also shared it with Todd.
Thank you.
I don't know that it's young folks riding in this. I think it's all adults. Yeah.
Well, they too need to know.
they probably need to be educated more than the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's good, Bob. Thank you very much for sending that along and your thoughts. I think that is important.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
So is it the same as last year?
Yeah.
And did you have any problems with them last year, Bruce? Well, I make a motion, we allow them to have the bike event. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this item?
Problem I saw last year was I saw 4 or 5 cyclists going right down the street, and some of them not even wearing helmets, and then going right through stop signs, and just not being very safe.
Okay. I don't know, Bruce, did you have any complaints last year?
We didn't receive any.
Okay. But something to monitor, and also something to make Todd aware of.
Correct.
Okay.
I just wanted
Sorry, Sharon, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention, I also have the application for the festival permit. So as long as you're approving this, I'll go ahead and sign this and send it into DLC.
We do have the signs in town that say the bikes can use the full traveled lane, so.
Only on the hill,
In Rocky Dell.
On where?
only on the hill going out of town.
That's the only place it
That's
can,
the only.
boy,
place.
that didn't register with me that was the only spot they could do that with.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a sign on top of the hill
Right.
and a sign at the bottom of the hill, so you got,
There's a sign at the bottom?
Because the
I
road's
only
so
saw
narrow.
one.
because the road's so
Okay.
narrow through there with the
Okay.
guardrails and stuff.
Okay,
Well, the signs might be there, but the
Yeah.
bicyclists and motorists don't really understand them or don't, it's just unsafe, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Okay. So we have a motion second. Any further
Who
discussion?
seconded?
I did.
Joel.
Joel.
Joel did. Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Okay. Moving on. Grant application, authorization request, Recreation Department, RISE VT Amplify Grant, $1,500 to construct a fitness trail segment.
You're up, Meredith.
Meredith, I think she's here. Yep.
Sorry. All right.
Okay.
So,
And Meredith, I included the photos that you shared with me about the map and the examples from Woodstock in the packet.
oh, great. Thank you for that. So I'm applying for this grant through Rise Vermont. It's due April 1st. I've already talked to Bristol Rec Club about the areas that we discussed about putting the fitness trail on. The fitness trail that we're working off of is actually a 10 station, but for right now, after I ran the numbers and the materials, it looks like I'll be able to squeak in a 4 station around the perimeter of the Bristol Rec Club, which is actually perfect. And if we want to grow and we're able to, we can, continue on and fulfill the 10 stations throughout Bristol. So this grant is really, I'm focusing towards the material of it. And I've asked Silver Maple and a couple other folks if they would be interested in partnering. Haven't heard back yet, but this is just another great way to keep people outside and be outside and use the rec fields. Thank you, Valerie.
Okay.
So these are just a couple of options, but you can see that it's the perimeter of the rec club. And we had our rec club meeting last week, and they approved that I could go forward with this. But I'll definitely, with them, give more of an exact spot. And obviously, we have to call DigSafe and make sure everything's legit where we decide to put that. But that's a perfect example right there, the Woodstock example. It's really cool. It's really clean. It's simple. It's wood, no plastic. So it has a nice natural feel to it. But also, I mean, look at that. You could sit there and have lunch. So, yeah.
Carry
So
in, carry out.
that's what I'm asking for.
Yeah.
And your placement doesn't.
If anybody walks the Burlington bike path, they have several of these up and along there. Most of theirs is not wood. Most of theirs is metal though.
Yep.
And the placement doesn't affect anything that the school is doing in terms of sports?
No, that's all on rec club, and everything would be set so it doesn't interfere with any sports. But like I said, it really is going to depend on where the safety and the dig safe.
Right. Okay. I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we allow the rec department to apply for the Rise Vermont grant for $1,500.
I'll second it.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Excellent. Thanks, Meredith. Okay. Moving on. Number 5, the Vermont opioid settlement and distribution to municipalities. Should Bristol opt in? Val, do you want to take this one? You're muted, Val.
Yeah. So last year, municipalities received correspondence from the Attorney General's office about opting into a settlement agreement. And apparently the town of Bristol never received this communication. Enclosed in your packet and online is a sample from Ferrisburg, the one that they received and responded to. Apparently Bristol was eligible because we are on the list of the state subdivisions, and we were assigned a percentage of what our share of the settlement would be, which is 0.453616828%. So, but the fact that we're on the list suggests that we would have been eligible. So thanks to Bob Donis and others, we are trying to open that door again to see if in fact Bristol can still opt in if the select board wants to choose to do that. If the town does not opt in, then whatever proceeds we would have gotten gets added to the statewide pool. So either way, the funds would get used for opioid response, but that if Bristol opts in, the town would have more control over how we would want those funds prioritized.
Now, do you know why we didn't get notified?
I don't know. Did it get lost in the mail? Did it go wayward off to some other address? We have no idea why we didn't receive it, but we didn't. I checked. Sharon and I checked all around, all the nooks and crannies, and we didn't see it. It just wasn't there.
Bob.
I did talk to the Attorney General's office about this, and they said that we could still opt in. Bristol could still opt in. And there's now a second settlement. The first settlement was for the Johnson & Johnson company. That was like a little over $12 million to Vermont. And then Purdue is another, most recent one. That was $53 million to the state of Vermont, of which Bristol's share of both of those together would be about $2,800 a year.
Right. In my tier report, I outline the breakout, and the distributors settlement is over 18 years, and the J&J is over 10 years.
Right.
So Bristol would receive a little over $2,000 a year for 18 years, and a little over $800 a year for 10 years.
Okay. And we'd have to obviously determine where this money goes. Make a decision about that.
I have not had time to look at what kind of criteria or parameters are attached to this funding, but we know that there are organizations who would benefit from it to further their work, and so that's probably something we would consider if we go with that direction.
That was going to be my question. Do we know how much work this is going to be?
Yeah, that was my question too.
My recommendation. I'm a board member for the Turning Point Center of Addison County, which helps people in recovery from all kinds of addictions, especially opioid addictions. And you're probably aware there's been a lot of overdose deaths in Vermont and in our county too. And so the objective of the Turning Point Center is to help people stay in recovery, not relapse, and get their life back in order so that they have a much better life than just being overcome by those drugs. So our recommendation would be that this funding would go to help those folks by funding the Turning Point Center.
Okay.
I also asked Bruce if there was anything in his programming that would benefit from this funding, and so he hasn't had time to think about that, but that's a possible option as well.
Okay. Val, what are your thoughts? I mean, do you see any downsides to doing this? You mentioned more control for the town, which is nice.
Right. I think for tonight's purposes, the select board action would be just to authorize me to proceed with whatever the paperwork is. And then once we get to that point, then if it looks onerous, we can decide not to do it. But I think the first step would be decide to.
Okay. Select board?
I'm kind of looking over the possible uses while we're talking, and it's pretty broad. I mean, I could see a number of things it could be used on. Clearly, more things it could be used for than what we're going to get. I mean, $2,000 isn't a ton of money, but it might make a difference in some of these to support them. I would support going forward is finding out more information about the program.
Make the motion.
I'll make the motion. I didn't know if anyone else wanted to give their 2 cents. I'll make the motion that we support this.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this?
Question, she
Yep,
supports opting in, not turn, yes, yeah, not a major decision.
Opting in.
Opting in,
only.
correct,
Okay.
correct. Not a decision as what we'll do with
To
the funds.
see what it takes to get the funds.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I'm for that.
And what the back end work is as
Yeah.
well.
Okay. You're okay with that, Peter, for your second?
Yes, that's what I understood.
Okay. Motion and a second. Further discussion on this matter? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. All those against, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank
Thanks,
you, Bob,
Bob.
for all
Thanks,
of your.
Bob. Yep.
Thanks, Bob.
And thanks, Jen. Okay, moving on. Item number 6. Hang on a second here. Number 6, discuss budget process, areas for improvement and options. Consider whether to subscribe to online budget platforms, Questica or ClearGov. So Val can give a little bit of background on this. I've been working with Val and Auntie on this as well. This was something that came from the select board this year after the budget process to try to looking at ways that we could maybe improve the budgeting process for the town, as well as sort of a number of other things that we're sort of looking to improve. Anthony is our new treasurer, and he has been looking at some of these options. I don't know, Val or Anthony, who wants to lead this discussion.
I can give a little bit of extra background that as I acknowledged in my notes that the Bristol's budget process has evolved a bit over the years. And when I came on board, I inherited the spreadsheet structure that we've been using, and I've hopefully made some improvements to it over time. But it's still it's a cumbersome product to work with. Last year, partly prompted by this remote meeting structure, Jen took over the budget process last year using the NEMRIC tables that she shared that she made shareable links to and sent links out by email. But folks were able to use in real time the budget spreadsheets or tables that she had prepared through NEMRIC. I'm not as proficient at NEMRIC as the treasurer's office is, so that was something I could do, and it would have been cumbersome for me to do it. And then that she left, and now it's back to the old spreadsheet structure. So there was a little bit of clunkiness going back and forth from that. And one of the complaints, but feedback, was that there wasn't a central place where folks could go to be sure that the worksheets that they were working from were the most current, because there were possibly different versions, and it just, folks wanted a central place to go. So I will segue to Anthony and let Anthony take it from there.
Hi, everyone. So as Ian and Valerie were mentioning, we were trying to brainstorm a better way, a more encompassing way of doing our budget and figuring out that kind of that time of the year where everything's hectic. It's a mad dash to try to make sure that everything's correct and everything is all set for the incoming year. We also had the town report. So as we were looking, we were trying to figure out, well, what do we want to accomplish? What direction do we want to take the town in? Because out of the two options we have that we've explored fairly deeply, I will say, has its own benefits and emphasizes on two different aspects mainly. So I guess I'll open by asking the board, in a few words, or one of the major things, what would you like to see improve about the budgeting process?
I think from what I understand, we were just looking for a more streamlined way to do it. But in looking at the notes, if it's going to be $20,000 a year to do it, cumbersome's all right by me.
I mean, I think it looking for consistency and keeping, you know, everything up to date and stuff we can all access currently, so that we can make comments or whatever, you know, we're making sure we're making comments on the most current stuff.
Okay. Joel or Darla, any comments?
No, I would echo what they both said. Just, I'm the newest at the budgeting process, and probably one of the older ones too, because I did it on the other side as a department head. But just trying to find that sweet spot where it makes sense for us to all have access to information, and being able to make notes, but not so much being able to make changes, because that makes things a little crazy when everyone's making changes that they think are correct. So finding that spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe?
Well, you take like the fire department budget. I'll just pick that one because I know it. It's quite long and in length of all the detail, you know, every line in it. And, you know, if Brett starts with it, he puts it in, and then he gets some information from Sharon and some from Anthony because he doesn't pay the electrical bills, so he needs to know what's in there and those types of bills. And then Valerie's got to redo it all again, and a couple of fingers strokes just by accident. You know, maybe an electrical bill from $10,000 went to $15,000 or something. But if she could just click on and say, "There's Brett's budget, I can work on it," and then tell him this is what I put in and not put in. But to have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, is really time consuming to Valerie, and time is not a factor for her. She's got plenty to do. It's not like, well, I got to do something because I only can work 20 hours a week and then I've got everything done. No, she can fill the week up pretty fast.
Well, it's the same way though for the department heads too,
Yeah.
you know, for them to be able to, you know, make the changes on one document rather than having to go from one to the other. When Val says I made a change or we need to make a change, then she's making it her end and Brett may be making it his end. I mean, I don't know how that all works for you guys.
I don't.
Right. And I think one of the things we talked about was the system speaking with the NEMRIC system. How can we, you know, was there a way to streamline that? And it looks like these two have the ability to do that, but for, you know, $100,000 over 5 years.
Well, I'm actually, you know, Anthony, you may be able to answer this because I was looking at this. From what I gathered from ClearGov, that's a manual entry.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, it's manual.
Download and upload.
Yep. If you'll permit me, I can explain that a little bit more. ClearGov is a newer agency, a newer group that came out to try to create a very similar system to what Questica has been making since '98. And ClearGov's a manual entry. So what we'd have to do is we'd have to print all of our reports and do a lot of the groundwork ourselves and then present it to ClearGov. Whereas Questica, I know that it's about $2,000 more, but they believe a lot in automation. They'd hook up to our NEMRIC system and they'd convert all the data straight into the system. So all the account numbers, all of our accounts, line by line, would all be put into the system. So we wouldn't have to do that. It'd just be there. They fully believe in automation to the point where, let's say I want to make a change in NEMRIC, right? Make some adjusting journal entries. Oh, it updates every 24 hours anyways, but if I wanted to have the most accurate numbers, I'd click a manual update and it update all the numbers in Questica. Whereas in ClearGov, you'd need to print it out and submit it, and they do it in 24 hours, for example.
Ian, when you spoke with the town and village of Essex, who uses that Questica program, what was their feedback?
Anthony talked to them.
I actually talked to the finance manager and finance director. For all of you that don't know, the village and town of Essex are actually splitting. And from what the finance director has told me, they have literally no complaints with Questica. They haven't had any challenges other than, and I quote, "What we should have done in the beginning is let them train us on it rather than try to figure things out for ourselves." That was probably the hardest part. And apparently, because of the separation, it actually works really well to manage that in Questica. If anyone actually looks, it looks a little bit different than how reports would be printed in Questica. So I inquired about that, and apparently they're doing a slow rollout over the next 3 years. So from 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, on bringing the system up because of their select board likes things a particular way and has a very hard time with change, even though the finance department of Essex is growing rapidly. So they did not have any complaints for me whatsoever. And I spoke to them for about an hour and a half.
Were you able to talk to anybody who uses ClearGov, Anthony?
I hadn't come across anyone, like no one had returned my calls, but I did manage to look up quite a bit of information. Let's see here. What's down? The city of Menlo Park actually gave an analysis of all of the available, this is dated from 2019, but it gave an entire breakdown of every possible software. And the two that they centered around were ClearGov and Questica. They went more with ClearGov because it was $2,000 cheaper and it integrated better with their system, which is called TM1. I'm not fully familiar with that, but having looked into ours is better suited to work with Questica because of the way that our account codes are already put into the system. The one thing Essex did say is they told me the format you're supposed to have the account numbers in, which ours are in. So that was just an added benefit. They had to change all their account numbers before they got onboarded, but we wouldn't have to worry about that.
So Anthony, tell me what their backup system is, because I was reading it and everything's up in the cloud. So what is their backup system? Do we get like a hard backup here that we maintain, or?
We have, from what they have said, is there is always a second copy. So anything that's sent in the same way that Nemrick works, because it's also cloud-based, there's always a second copy that's completely separate. So if we were to lose everything, they'd be able to re-upload it, so to speak.
Yeah,
And
they have versioning and can roll back. If devastating things are done by us to the system, we can roll back and reversion if we need to. I don't think we know the answer in terms of if their connection goes down. I assume, given that their length that they've been doing this, they probably have a number of different servers all over the world that they have this information on, and it's not one central server. So I'm hoping that, but things do happen. It's, Google goes down, as does Facebook and things like that. So it is possible they could go down. We might not be able to access it. We wouldn't lose it, but we just wouldn't be able to get to it if their servers were offline or something. We could ask them about that too.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And the information would still be in Nemrick, so it's not like we wouldn't be able to access it.
Right. So Val, this would be entitled to ARPA funds, wouldn't it?
Yes, it
Yes,
would.
it is.
Yes.
For 2
and
years.
not only this year, but next year too.
Yeah.
So
what I
from my
wanted to
point go on, Val, sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
I mentioned in my notes that I actually looked at ClearGov back in 2019, and I was I forget what the proposal was at the time. For some reason, $5,000 pops into my mind, but that can't possibly be right. But even if it was $5,000, I was daunted by the idea of that for a software, or anyway, whatever it was. I was put off about proceeding with it because it just seemed like an expense that we weren't prepared to deal with. And looking at these, now we're talking about it. But the other point I want to make is that under this current budget process and the spreadsheet process that we're using, I need to update each of the departmental worksheets each time there's a new monthly budget report or quarterly budget report. I have to update all of those numbers for all of those departments.
Right.
And that is time consuming.
Right.
To have to do that. But with this system, just to put I'm not pushing one way or the other, but if we did go to this cloud-based system, that this would be eliminated completely because the numbers would be there automatically.
Well, just think of how much time you would have back.
Well, that's
That $29,000 isn't looking so bad.
No, well,
I mean,
somebody's got to justify it for me, that's all.
My problem with the ClearGov,
Yeah.
they've been in since 2015. I mean, with the technology, I just find it flabbergasting that everything's a manual entry, that they can't link up. And maybe it's because NEMRC won't let them. I don't know. Maybe there's a priority, software.
Yeah, proprietary.
No,
stuff.
in terms of looking at the two demos, they have two different methodologies with the information. Questica, I think because of their experience and how long they've been around, the synchronization for them, that was the main focus in terms of synchronizing with our financial system, and both ways, both pulling information from NEMRC and us being able to put information into Questica and have it sync back to NEMRC. So that's what their whole sort of foundation is built on, I think, is synchronization. Whereas ClearGov, I think because they're newer, the first thing that they said, and one of our first questions was a synchronization, and they said, no, it's a manual because we want to make sure that it works correctly and it doesn't break something. So they don't have, I think, the experience and the wherewithal to sort of make that synchronization possible. And so I think that's why it's just two different ways of approaching it. And I understand both, but if you have the decades of experience like Questica does, it seems like they have everything covered. They know exactly what you're doing, and they understand the financial world and what a municipality might need.
And I have a comment. Oops.
No,
go ahead, Sharon.
And I have a comment. This year, the budget something needs to change with the budget, because this year it made my ballots late, which is unacceptable. We only have 20 days where we have to send out the ballots for town meeting. And with all the people that I send out of state, Florida, Arizona, it cuts it. And the Secretary of State's office understood this year, a couple days, but normally they're not that understanding. So it affects more than just finishing the budget process. It affects how soon the ballots and stuff go out. And we don't want to have to change a town meeting date because we can't get it done.
That means we have to decide sooner on the budget.
Yeah.
Not wait until when we do decide.
So
It must have been the extra day because we had figured on approving the budget on January 25th. We needed another meeting, so we met again on Thursday.
Which put me behind.
Yeah,
because they usually send it as soon after that last Monday that we actually have it. So by losing the extra 3-4 days before they got the information so that they could do it, it caused them to be a couple days late.
And those dates, I mean, we shouldn't be running up right close to those dates anyway. We should be, at least a couple of weeks of breathing room. And I feel, by looking in and investigating and perhaps getting a system like this, that after training and after some time using it, I don't think we would have those issues. So I was sort of a driving force in this. I was sort of vented my frustrations in terms of working on the budget for the last 2.5 years for the select board, and just the main thing that I'm see, and this is a person I'm coming in and learning this, is just the budget is hundreds and hundreds of line items for every single department. And so it's from what it once was 50 years ago to now, it's just so complex. I think the method that we're using is very outdated and eventually will bite us in the ass in some way when something gets misplaced or a number gets misplaced. And the ability to be able to work with departments as well as work with members of the select board to sort of see this budgeting process and move through it over the months that we do, I think something really needed to change. So, we did a little bit of research. We found ClearGov through Val, and I sort of found the article about Essex for Questica. Anthony, Sharon, myself, and Val have both had demos of both, and we've actually had multiple demos of Questica. And I think also too, it started off as just being a budget looking at the budget, how can we improve the ability for the select board and for the town to do the budget? But it offers a lot more in terms of not just the budget. The yearly audit becomes much more easier to understand and to actually do, because all the information's in there. You also have a transparency part. So anything that a taxpayer wants to know is very easily accessible. And both systems have the ability to be able to have nice looking print for any data that you want out of the system, or even be able to post information online. And there's a lot of great examples that that the select board can look at, and members of the public, it's on the website here, to be able to show where the money is going in terms of the town's budget, or where your tax dollars are going. This offers just being able to pull information from NEMRIC, having us input into the system. It then starts to create this picture of what the town is spending and what the town's revenues are. So I think that's really nice. You also have the personnel section in terms of being able to detail all the personnel that we deal with, whether it's employees, whether it's part-time, whether it's any number of things. You'd be able to track capital projects, even just tracking the ARPA funding money and where that money is going to go, the 1.1 million. I think that's a huge benefit. A system like this allows you to track potentially the hundreds of projects where this money might go, and offers this digital trail that when it comes to auditing, we'd have the system that details everything that's happened with that money, or capital projects, road improvements, water, Stony Hill Business Park, things like that. You're essentially creating project pages based on the information that you're putting into this, which is a lot of it's pulling from NEMRIC in terms of your spending, but there's a lot more on top of that that you're inputting in. And so,
but the key point there, Ian, is it has to be put in correctly. So they really need to get the training ahead of time before they get into
correct.
this.
Correct. It's with Questica, which I think is how we're leaning in terms of, for all of us, I think when we were watching this, the Questica, both of their demos, it just seemed, the way that their system is designed, it just seemed a much better fit with how we all thought. And it just seemed easier to understand, and myself included. And I have some experience with sort of using software, but I have no experience using financial software. And even for me, it just seemed like an easier system to work through than the ClearGov. And it's probably because of their decades of use. And just being a company that's been around for that long, they just know how this information should be presented well. But yes, so I'm pushing for this. It does have a healthy price tag. But if you look at some of the other things, software services that we already pay for, we're spend a great deal. I mean, software is a big part of that to make the town run. And NEMRIC is $12,000 a year. Our Dominion Tech Services, which is for all our email and all the other things, that's around $15,000 a year. So it's definitely not something that is a shocking number. And the fact that we could potentially use the ARPA funding for the first 2 years, that takes a big chunk of that out, and then hopefully gets us a handle on what's going on and gets us a much easier way to be able to work with the budget and just general funds and everything in between.
So my thought was that this was just going to save us time. And what I'm hearing now is that it's going to save all our department heads time. It's going to save Valerie a lot of time in entering stuff. It's not just a tool to make our lives easier. Because that was my, to spend that kind of money, just so that we spend an extra or 15 minutes less a meeting figuring out whether we're on the right page or not. To me, it wasn't worth it, but it sounds like it's tying a whole lot more together than just keeping our budget, our part of the budget stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think you're right. I think it integrates all the department heads, and it's going to save Valerie a lot of time from having to manually enter so much stuff.
Right. And it also sounds like it has multiple uses beyond just the budget,
Right.
if we're looking at project management and that type of thing. So that makes sense as well.
I have to admit, I'm very excited about the capital projects component of both of the systems. There's a lot of opportunity there if we go in that direction.
Anthony, in terms of your experience with it and the talks that you've had, what are sort of the most interesting things that the system can do for you. You're the one who might
Okay.
be using it the most.
Yeah, I see myself using this year round, honestly, and I feel like if we do that, then we should cut about a month off of our budgeting time because of the way that it can calculate. We can see trends. We can literally look back 10 years because, well, for Questica, for example, they can pull 10 years of data from NEMRIC, and we can have like a 15-year trend to see, okay, this is what we've spent in this line item. But honestly, I agree with Valerie in the capital module they have. I think that would be really beneficial, especially going through and just how we maintained a lot of that stuff. I think it'd just be really good to have. For those of you who don't know, I've seen Questica work. I've had 4 demos with them over the past 2 months. And their capital plan, you can actually embed invoices into. You can keep a running document and audit trail with all of that. So everything can stay organized. And I think it could only complement what we have going on in NEMRIC. Another focal point besides like the standard operating budgets, the personnel module. The only list of employees we really have that goes into any kind of detail is the payroll module and NEMRIC, which isn't organized the way that I want it to be organized, because it goes by last name. There's no way you can categorize departments. So everyone's like, you need to be incredibly detailed in order to even have some scope of, all right, where is everyone? So I've been having to go through it and kind of modify each person individually rather than being like, okay, all these people are in the highway department, the rec department. Yeah. So there's a lot we can do with this software.
So one of the other things we wanted to do was to be able to track grants individually, so that we knew that what money was spent.
Mhm.
And that was aside from this new program. It was one of our goals was to be able to have a separate file. So what you're saying is
it'll do that.
It will be separate through this.
Yep. It will, going all the way from line items all the way to who's getting paid by that grant. Because I know the police department gets the governor's highway safety grant. The rec departments pay a lot of part-timers through grants. So it's just an easier way to maintain where that money's going.
And then I guess my only other question is, Valerie, you were, when we first started talking about changing, you said you liked your spreadsheets and you were happy with the way they worked. And what I want to know is, have you seen enough of this so that you are comfortable with this?
I'm very used to spreadsheets. I'm comfortable with them. I will probably still maintain a form of the spreadsheets that we use, such as the personnel part, because one of the reasons I like about the spreadsheets is because the tabs, if it's a file with multiple tabs and they all talk to each other. So a change in one tab trickles into another tab, and you can see how a change works in real time. For example, when we are in the budget process and we're considering compensation rates, if we change percentages or how much we want to increase somebody's compensation, we can see it in real time, how that affects the budget, how it affects other areas of the budget, and how it affects the tax rate, because I calculate the tax rate based upon all of those changes. So one change here affects that final change of the tax rate. We can see it just like that. So I'm familiar with that. From what I understand, either of these online programs, you can also run scenarios. You can run multiple scenarios and save them and go back to them and see changes in real time. Familiar with how that would actually work, but I like to think I'm learnable. So I'd probably maintain some sort of auxiliary or ancillary spreadsheets just for my own benefit, but I wouldn't do all that data entry stuff for sure.
And part of it too is sort of like the system's nice. It's fairly open in terms of Val even creating those sheets. if we use something like Questica, Val can just export as an Excel file. You have all your detail there, and you can do what you're used to doing in the way that you're familiar with. And so it's not something where Val, even if she wants to do both, learn one system, because it is definitely a learning process. It's, with Questica, it's a 13-week onboarding process where they put all of our data in and they train everyone. And they really will train everyone to however we want to do it. Even with that, Val can be learning that as well as doing the Excel side of things, because you're exporting that. And it's not something where I think you're having to do without, having to manually put all this information in. It's already going to be there, and you can get the documents and information in a format that you're familiar with.
Right. One thing that comes to mind, the insurance. If one of the is the liability insurance, and we get this information from VLCT in a very complicated structure. And I use a spreadsheet to take that information, run all kinds of calculations to figure out how much of that particular insurance expense goes to the fire department, how much of that particular insurance expense goes to the public works department, et cetera. And then any changes, and that information gets carried over right into the other budget tab. And so if there's any change at all in the insurance it trickles over into the other tab, and we can see it right away. So those tabs automatically, or those cells automatically populate with that information. So that's just something I'm very familiar with, but I presume that these online things can figure that out too.
Yeah, it seemed like from the demos, like anything that you were interested in doing, Val, it could do, which is kind of great. And you're paying this money, but you're also paying for a person that you can talk to at any point over your subscription, and paying for free. There's no extra charges. You have that upfront cost, obviously, of the software for the year, and you have the extra 10 for the onboarding. But then after that, if we had any questions at all, any one of us, we can reach out to Questica and have someone, and we have a contact person with them. Same with ClearGov too. They offer, I can't remember what they're called, but a particular person that helps you with any question that you might have. So I don't think it's going to be a system where we get it and then we're 6 months down, Anthony has some questions, maybe I do, or maybe Val does, and we can't get to anyone, or we're having to, come to before the select board to ask, can we, put some money in to be able to have these questions answered. It's going to be there, and we're going to have that support. The other part of this too is sort of looking at longevity and looking at staff turnover, because that does happen. And so by learning a system that's not inherited, if you have a set point that every department head is learning, select board members are learning, town administrator, treasurer, administrator, things like that, then I think it's a better system to be able to have everything in one place that someone can come in and learn and be familiar with, as opposed to bringing their own way of working. And so if there is turnover, 5, 10, 15 years down the line, hopefully you have a system that's there that you've built up over those years that has all the information in, and then anyone new is trained in that, as opposed to having to be trained in something else. But everyone's all on the same system.
And there would be other people here that knew it. It wouldn't be like it was one person being dumped into it.
Correct. Yeah, and every department head. So you have these different layers. You have sort of like the super user, which would be Anthony and Val, and they have access to everything. But when Meredith, for example, is doing her budget, she would have access to the information that only she needs to see. And it can change at any time, and administrators can set that. And so she would be using this. She'd log into the system as her user, be able to start working with her budget. Everything would be there. It'd be a much cleaner system, I think, than starting with an Excel spreadsheet that maybe you're copying from last year's budget across, and you're just doing some updates to it. All the information's in there. She can pull information in terms of actually what's been sent, actual live figures of what has been spent over the entire year. There's a great interactive way, which is what we were trying to do, sort of adding comments in to fields. This way you get notified. So if she presents her budget for the first time to us and it's offline and we're not in a meeting yet, and let's say Michelle has a comment, she can comment right on it as her user. That gets notified, sent to Meredith, and she can do some updating. And you can track all these changes, all those back and forth comments. It's all live. You can jump back. I mean, it's very, very complex. I will say that there's a lot to learn, but I think if we work with them and get the system and get the data from Nemrick and have it put in and start using it, I think we're going to see a lot of things that we didn't even realize that we needed can be done by this system. So I think it's a very positive thing, but obviously there's a price tag associated with that.
One of the other things that I observed about it, the ability to include not just the communication comments, but general comments. If you recall, when I first came on board and we were using the original spreadsheet structure, and there were lines and lines of historical comments of how much gas was used in that particular department that year, or explanations basically of some of the changes in the numbers. And through a system like this, those kinds of comments can be recorded and kept and referred to again. Even as you change years over the years, you can go back to those comments, but it's a way of kind of capturing some of those explanations that this line item increased because the price of XYZ increased, that kind of thing. Just kind of keep track of those explanations easily, and you can see them or you can hide them, but they're there, they're available.
I guess, Anthony, would the NEMRIC system go away, or you'll have to keep that to a cost of $15,000 for taxes?
No, because this would be our budget, personnel software, capital plan, but NEMRIC is our books. It's how we record everything. It's how we do all of our finances. So it's the other half to the coin, so to speak.
Would we save $29,000 a year? But the cost bothers me because it starts day one and then it's just every year. And it's for the people sitting behind me and all of us taxpayers on the screen also, that's about 1 cent on your tax rate. So you figure out what's going to cost you.
Well, the 29,000 is only year one.
Right.
That includes 10,000 setup, and then it goes, then at $10,000. So that's
10,000.
19.
Well, it's only
It goes way down to 19.
Yeah, but then it's 5% increase every year for the
This
next
is your
5 years.
Custoca. So that's
Yeah.
year one, year two.
I mean, would
In
it,
5 years.
could we save that money and just start a month early, start November 1st instead of December 1st? Everybody said that we were.
That was the question I asked, Joel. That was my thinking, but I think what it does is it allows the department heads, it saves Valerie time, it saves the department heads time. It's not, I was thinking that this was just a tool for the board, and it's not.
No.
It's for the whole organization.
But will we use it?
Well,
They'll
yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
Well, I
Because
think
I was gonna say, it'll save Anthony time, it'll save Sharon time, it'll save Val time, just in
to say nothing.
I hope.
manual entries of stuff that they're putting in now.
We hope.
Well,
No,
to say
there's-
nothing of the audit as well. It'll make things cleaner and
Yes, the audit that has been going on since December.
Anthony walked in the door.
Yeah, I walked in the door. a month
You know
ago.
how cheap I am, Joel.
Yeah, I know, but my second thing is, I'm surprised. There's 250 odd towns in the state of Vermont governments, and this is the only two we hear of in Essex. I'd like to not stop it, but pull the rein, and let's do a little more research. Let's do, as we call it at the bank, let's do the FADE process. And I won't tell you what that stands for, right, Christine, but we have to do an analysis of it, data, collect it, write up your proposal, and I'm not sure we've done that yet. I'm really not. I'd like to see what Middlebury does and what the other, I'd like to see some more towns, what they're using.
We use paper.
Use paper. Eric says Starksville use
Sure.
paper. So,
No, Joel, I think you're
Now.
absolutely right. I think you're right, Joel, and I think I would like to do more of that. Obviously, the Questica came up just in a search that I did. It just happened to be Essex, and so we reached out to them. But I'm sure there are a number of other options that are out there. And as Peter said, we started off like, how can we improve this budgeting process for the select board? This one is an option that offers that, as well as all these other things that we sort of didn't realize. But I agree. I think we should do a little bit more research. This was sort of just presenting to the board, just so the board has been made aware of this and that we're looking into this. And also, too, all the links are there. Feel free to take a look at it if you're interested. I am interested in this, and that's why I've been involved. But I'm happy to work with Anthony and Val and sort of do a little bit more research and find out what other towns are doing. And also, we can get lists of what other Vermont towns are using it and reach out to them as well.
it can help us with, definitely, we had some personnel leave and some thinks they've got 20 days coming to them and they think they got 40 days coming to them. If that clears that stuff up too, And especially with grants, we've had some grants that we thought we paid or didn't get paid, and where the money went. And when the government comes in 5 years after that grant ended, and they start auditing.
Yeah.
And you're trying
It
to
does,
put through
it
memory
does
of your
all of
bank.
that. Even one of the nice personnel things that was in the demo was being able to flag a new hire and set reminders about when a review would happen, or when what if they needed to do something by a certain time. We spoke about this in the meeting before this at 6:30 in terms of a new hire coming in and needing to get a particular license by a certain time. All that information you can put into this and have it come back around and back to you to remind you, which I thought, just seeing that, they demoed that, and I thought, oh, this is great. We've already, I don't know how many times we've talked about that in select board meetings, about that very thing that this program could remind us about. So that was a really positive
when were
thing.
we going to give them that 25 cents?
Yeah, right. That pops up. I mean, and we could all be notified of that and actually remember it, and have a record of it, which is great. But yeah, I think more research is in order, and we're happy to do that. Val.
Jill emailed that, speaking of budgets, how can she help with water and sewer budget updates? Because again, that's all spreadsheet driven. So
right. I mean, all of that could be in this system like Questica, and she could be a user, and she could be able to have full access. I think one of the other things too, and we are talking about this specifically in terms of Questica, is that looking at the demos, I feel that it could really empower department heads and departments to really having a better grasp of their budgets and understanding of them. And I speak from doing Bristol Core's budget when I was executive director there. A lot of times you're sort of pushed at the end of the year, you're racing to do things, and you're pulling stuff off from what you did the previous year. And obviously that budget is a lot less complex than town department budgets, but it's the same kind of mentality, just because it is an ominous thing that creeps up on you just because you're doing any number of things. With this kind of system, I think having that information here and accessible all year round, I think gives you a lot more power to be able to see exactly where all the money is being spent, all the revenue coming in, and allows you to sort of experiment and really, really explore what you might want to do as a department. And that goes for every department, whether it's public works, whether it's recreation or police or fire. I think it offers a lot of really unique opportunities to sort of explore how you might operate as a department.
I think you're absolutely right about that, because Anthony made the comment about he would be using it all year round. I'm certain I would, and I agree that other department heads would benefit, would find it very useful to be able to access that information anytime. And in fact, an example, as one of the agenda items is authorization to use technology fund monies to buy a new computer. For me to find out what the balance is in that fund, I'd have to log into NEMRIC, figure out what code it is, and just go through all kinds of stuff that I'm not familiar. I don't use NEMRIC enough to have a real clear hand to find stuff and get the information. But if we had this system, it would be right there. I just log in and go to where I want to go, and there it would be. So it would probably save me 20 minutes of time just trying to find out what that number is.
Yeah, it sounded more and more like it's something a direction that we need to head. I mean, it sounds like it's going to do what the board wanted to do, plus a whole lot more. I mean, when I was looking through and looking at the cost of it, I was like, absolutely not. But it's not just for us, and that's what I was, The original intent was to streamline what we were doing, and this does that plus a whole lot more. But if we're going to do a little bit more research and see if there's anything else out there, then I think we beat it up enough for tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I think it sounds like we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Anthony or Val, don't you guys still have that statewide internet or email listserv that you could put on and get some other ideas? What other towns are using besides, what are you using if you're not using NEMRIC?
Yeah.
Towns are using NEMRIC, but not every town.
In conjunction with NEMRIC
Yeah.
for this type of thing.
Right. That's a good suggestion.
Okay, yeah, I'd say we sort of continue the research and maybe bring back in a couple of weeks to see our findings. It is something that I do think it'd be nice to move quickly on, just because there are a lot of projects coming up that I think a system like this, whether it's Questica or whether it's something similar, could be really advantageous for the town. And it's, I think specifically for the ARPA money and how that's being spent. I mean, I know Joel really was, and we are all sort of concerned about the audit trail of that and whether that's going to bite us come, later on because of how complex that money is and how it can be spent. So any type of system that is able to track that for us and be able to, and for us to be able to put information into it that anyone can have access in the office, I think that would be really useful. So I want to keep this going, and have it be prominent on our agenda, so we can make a decision, hopefully.
Yeah, I'd just also like to add, if we were to do this, I would hope we'd be able to come to a consensus by the end of April so that we could start the new year, July, with this software uploaded and onboarded. If that's too soon, then I understand that. That's not an issue. I just thought I'd say that.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. Okay.
Although,
all right, moving on. Oh, sorry.
Although, if we were planning to use ARPA funds this year, I don't know if we're limited by our fiscal year in terms of using ARPA funds or some other calendar benchmark for using ARPA funds between the 2 years.
Isn't there a way to take that back for lost revenue
Yeah.
or
Yep, we'll
money
get to that in a
spent?
moment.
So that's always an option to be able to get that money to pay.
Right.
And I think ARPA funds can be used, whether it's Questica or another option, something like this that maybe has the same kind of price tag. ARPA funds can be used. IT support. A lot of towns throughout Vermont and throughout the United States are using money for technology upgrades, whether it's backbone infrastructure, IT, and or this kind of thing, or networking, things like that. The one thing, and we've discussed this, Val and Anthony and Sharon and I, was the process of doing that. The select board has final say on how the ARPA funds are spent, but we do have an advisory committee that's looking at that. And so I want to make sure that if we're looking at doing lost revenue, or another way of using the ARPA funds, that we would let the committee know and have the communication with them, especially if we wanted to move on this sooner rather than later.
That's coming up on the agenda later tonight.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on since we spent a lot of time on this. Request for authorization.
Yeah, you're getting meetings done by 8 o'clock is out the window now, Ian. So I'm happy.
Trying. Request for authorization to use technology reserve funds to replace treasurer's computer and tech support for that transfer.
I hope that's fairly self-explanatory from the notes that the treasurer's computer is one of the oldest in our supply, and it's on its last legs, and we need to replace it. I don't know if Anthony has specific, but if not, then hopefully the select board would feel comfortable giving a general authorization, maybe not to exceed, but I still don't know what the actual balance is in the technology review fund or reserve fund.
Speak to that a little bit. As of right now, we still have not put in our $7,000 appropriation for this year. So at the bare minimum, there's $7,000 in the account.
But you need it sooner than that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we still need to shift over the money, but it would be there.
No, I
So
see.
there's a
For this
current
fiscal
balance of $7,000 if you put another, but we haven't put our appropriation in this year, so there really would be 14.
No.
Well, no, I don't have the exact number, so all I'm speaking for is the appropriation that we need.
Okay.
He knows there's 7 going in.
Okay.
Okay.
God, I hope your computer doesn't cost you $7,000.
No, it won't. It won't. Probably everything, including like technical support and stuff like that, should be under 2. In the same way that Sharon's computer was probably ballpark.
I'd say the only
tech
thing
may
which
need
is,
to be a little more, Anthony, with your software.
Yeah.
I'd say in terms of the researching the computer, just have it match, if you can, similar specs, and make things like that to the machines that we have, so it's not a mishmash of brands. And I'm sure you're doing that anyway, but that would be the one thing I would note.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, Nay? Motion carries. Okay, get a new computer.
Woo!
All right, it's 8:56, and we're on to number 8. Select board calendar and goals for the coming year.
Yes.
Val posted a list online.
To get new software to.
All right.
Forgive me while I'm shuffling papers. I have a very small workspace and I just buried. Oh, no, I didn't. I put it over here. This is what I was looking for. Okay.
You want me to share it, Val?
Yep, I've got it.
Okay.
So yeah, hopefully folks had a chance to glance at the goals and well, the calendar first is the calendar and some of the items we can foresee coming up on the upcoming agendas. And then on the other pages is a list of accomplishments, which is always nice to look back on and remind ourselves that we actually got a lot done, even though it might not have felt like it. And then a list of things that are current or likely to be current. I think it's a pretty hefty list. And then the list of pending and future projects that we've been talking about. They're on the horizon. We just haven't been able to get there yet. So, and this is not exhaustive. If there are things that I overlooked, please let's throw them on. This doesn't need to be a heavy lift for the agenda tonight. I know we're short on time, but at the very least, I just wanted to have you be familiar with the calendar and some of the items coming up, and see if there are any things you want to add or change on that. If you had a chance to glance at it, I don't think we need to go through the whole list.
Mm-hmm. I think it looks fine. I think I'll once we finalize this, I'll update it on the webpage as well. I know that hasn't been updated in a while, and maybe it's something that doesn't get updated. It's just maybe it's a yearly thing, but at least allows the public to be able to see on the website what we've done and what we're working on and what we'd like to do.
She probably didn't hear me now. Hey Val.
Yeah.
Did you hear me about the class 4 roads policy?
No.
We had talked about that, and so with regard to those 4 or 5 roads we were talking about, we want to give them enough time. Get somebody to maintain the roads, so we're going now.
I have that on in June. That's on the calendar for June.
I mean, for those, it's going to be on the calendar for June, but then it's a decision it's a year later, correct?
Well, it's on the calendar. The way I'm thinking it through is that I think I've begun to draft some policies. It's been so long, I don't remember where I left off. But I did begin some work on some class 4 road policies, certainly some research. But my thinking is to bring to the board a draft policy on class 4 roads, and that would begin a public discussion of the priorities and what it is that the select board wants to accomplish with this policy. And then as we move through that, we would contact the affected property owners and engage them in the discussion. And by then, I would figure if we're making any real changes to the policies that affect how we maintain class 4 or private roads, that folks would have time in the fall to make, or even before then, later in the summer, to make arrangements if needed.
Well, Valerie, isn't it really just, it's a discussion not on class 4 roads, it's a discussion on reclassifying roads.
All of the above. Class 4 roads, private roads, reclassification.
And class 3 and turn it to a 4, and you may take a 4 and turn it to a trail.
They all relate to each other.
Right,
Okay.
and right now we have.
We have a policy as to
Right, it's not
what
a
we do.
policy on class 4 roads, it's a policy on reclassifying.
No,
No.
but it's.
We
kind
gotta
of
have
both.
the policy.
We have to have the
I agree.
policy, we have to have the policy in place first as to what we're gonna do for each class.
Okay.
And then you
There
can,
go. Yes.
then you can
Bristol already
reclassified.
has a class 4 road policy. It was adopted in, I think, 1980s, I think. I'm not sure, but
Before my time.
it's got dust on it. It's got a good layer of dust on it. And so at the very least, we should revisit it and include the discussion about private roads because it's relevant, and come up with the policies and engage the affected neighborhoods and property owners and from there. But I figure we could do that during the beginning, early summer, and kind of go through summer, and then have things kind of fall into place by fall, so folks, if they need to, can make decisions.
Well, they may need more time than that. I mean, they're probably gonna need a year.
Yeah, I think we talked about a year.
Yeah.
From when the decision would be made, it would be a year.
Okay.
And that's fine. That just, that just gives us a time frame that we'll be doing it. If we go down that road, we'll be
No
doing
pun
it.
intended.
Very good.
And here again, not to reinvent the wheel, but a few years ago, it was all over the news. Colchester went through this with those camp roads and all this, and they reclassified, and maybe, instead of trying to reinvent it, try to look at some of what they did.
Mhm.
Not saying we gotta do it, but
I've been through this too in other places. So yeah, it's doable. You just need to go through the process.
Okay.
Well, one
And
thing, sorry,
Go,
just one
Michelle.
thing I don't
Darla.
see on here. Oh, now I'm seeing it as I'm saying it. The personnel policy review and updates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we started that a year ago.
May.
I made my comments and Val sent it to everybody. You've never gotten back to it.
Yep. I'd say, select board members, if you go through this list, look at what's on our calendar, as well as looking at the current projects and the pending, and if you have additions to that, send notes to Val, and then she can update this list. And let's get this approved, or at least a final list for the next meeting.
Yep. I know that Jill's not on the Zoom anymore, but I will invite her to also look at this list.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and anyone else who needs to be involved.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Hey,
moving on.
And Val, just so you guys know, our internet here seems to be unstable, so you keep freezing on us.
Okay. Yeah, you seem fine. I guess. Yeah, I'll have to look at that. Another IT thing that we need to fix in the town offices.
Can I make a suggestion? It's 9:00 and we have some folks waiting. Can we skip to their?
No.
Yeah, unless you really want to spend the night.
We got one, it's just the
It's just
ARPA
one
thing
more?
in between,
Okay,
right?
so we just have one more. Okay. All right.
Okay. Item 9, the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funding update and select board goals.
Right. So I don't know how lengthy you want to get into this conversation. As I noted.
motion we table it.
No.
Well, no, that's okay.
Just give us a brief.
Just give us a briefing.
Yeah.
Well, it is in the notes.
Yeah.
Right.
The advisory committee is meeting on April 4th. The one thing I want to touch on is that with the final rule, one of the major developments of the final rule was the provision of revenue replacement, and the Treasury authorized up to $10 million plus or minus as a standard deduction that municipalities can take without justification. You don't have to document and itemize all that stuff as a standard deduction. And when a municipality does that, it becomes town money to be used for town services. And the definition of town services is fairly broad. And the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and other organizations are strongly encouraging municipalities to take that choice. And if the municipality does take that choice, that does not eliminate any of the other options that the advisory committee might present to the select board, presuming that they fit within all of the eligible categories. So I just want to put that.
We could the standard deduction, I know you see you guys 10 million, since we all are getting 1.1 million, there's
Right.
no worry about us hitting any cap.
Right.
So
So
we take all
so
that
we
money, it becomes a town money, and then the ARPA committee could still do their thing
Exactly.
And that way we get the money here and not have to worry about missing any deadlines.
Exactly. The one deadline I did want to mention is the town must decide by April 30th whether to take the standard deduction. So we can't, in other words, we can't wait for the advisory committee to come up with their recommendations. The town needs to decide by April 30th whether or not to take the standard deduction.
Do you see a downfall?
No.
To doing it that way?
No, I don't.
either.
Maybe there's one there that I have not seen, but I don't see one. And also the reporting is much more streamlined, much less administrative burden, which I'm all for. So
the comments that we came up with before, one of our questions was, if the audit comes back and years later we're audited and we might have to pay some of this, does this helps us with that because of the way that reporting is?
Yes.
Okay, then I think we should take the standard deduction for the entire amount. So it becomes our money. We keep the committee and we go along, but with that one change, I think not to have the complexities of what we might have to deal at the federal level seems a heck of a lot easier to deal with.
And one example of that is if the
town, you guys, we totally lost you. Got disconnected, so we didn't even hear the last 3 minutes.
Would you fix your internet there, for goodness sake?
Yeah, really. We've been using too much bandwidth.
We're gonna put Peter
No,
on.
you've got gigabit there now. There's no way, even with that many people.
You would think so.
One of the other things about this, without the standard deduction. What? Did I freeze up again?
Yes,
Yeah, you are.
You're good now.
Somebody with a second table, the table is being up.
If the town subgrants the ARPA funds without taking the standard deduction and subgrants it to another organization, then the town would be responsible for monitoring and reporting on what that other organization is doing with that money, and to make sure that organization is complying. So in other words, the town would have this monitoring role to play in addition to everything else.
Yeah.
So no, thank you.
Okay. All right.
You guys said it in email.
I'm gonna. What we could do is I'll make a suggestion just in terms of the network. I might stop the town's video and just continue with an audio discussion just in case. Would that be okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Your audio will continue.
Yeah. We know what you look
All
like.
right.
We can just hear your voice.
Okay. Yeah, it should be that should help you. If for some, I don't know why it's so bad. It should be fine. So personally, I think given what I've heard this evening, I think the standard deduction for the full amount would be very beneficial to us. And I don't know what other board members feel about that.
I agree. If that's the best way and easiest way to get it here and then decide so we're not missing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't see a downfall.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see that.
We have a question from Linda.
Yes, so I'm not quite understanding all this, but that means that ARPA funding couldn't be given to, or it would be very burdensome to give it to an NGO like, well, I'm on Turning Point Center board. It would be very burdensome for you to give it to us because of the monitoring that you have to do. So basically you're saying that, giving it to a nonprofit would be too burdensome with the ARPA funding.
If we didn't take the standard deduction, if the town does take the standard deduction, then the town can basically do what it wants, as long as what the town spends it on is within the umbrella of municipal services. And one could argue that even through our annual appropriations that the town does every year to various civic organizations, that is consistent.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything in terms of the potential for the money. It's just the way that things are reported and that the town would have to report. And I think a lot of the complexities of that on the federal side go away if we take a standard deduction and then the money is the town's essentially. But I think we would continue the process. Nothing else would change. We have our advisory committee that would continue, and we would work, and nothing would really change. It's just the way that things are reported would change for the good of the town.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make the motion that we take the standard deduction and the full amount of ARPA money that we've got coming to the town.
No second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. What was that?
And then I would make sure we communicate that with our ARPA committee.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and Val and I are part of that, and Val definitely will. Motion and a second. Further discussion on this? Seeing none. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. All those against, nay. Motion carries. Okay.
And as to the other part of this agenda item
Maybe
about
if we all say aye, maybe he was just, there you are.
We're back.
We lost
Bye.
you.
Did you get any eyes in?
Yeah, we got some eyes.
Okay.
Very strange. I mean, maybe it's something that you want to start. If Val's the host, you could start, jump off, and jump back on again. It seems very strange. It's happening.
Well, we were the host,
We were.
and then we got it back again.
Well, we got a couple of notes that said you've been now host again, and then, I don't know.
Okay.
Just really
So
weird.
it's dropping off for some reason. We haven't,
Yeah.
for us watching you even with your video on, you were fine. We never noticed you drop off. So it's just on your end for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay, Val, continuing.
Oh, it's on your end because we're still transmitting. The whole town's messed up. We're good.
Okay.
Okay, Val. So in terms of projects that we would support the select board.
Right. So in my report, I repeated the list that we had generated earlier, just as to prompt some thinking about what the select board's priorities might want to be, that to communicate to the ARPA committee, so that the ARPA committee can factor that into their thinking as they go forward. And on the list, I have the Pine Street water line replacement, the base slope repair, the core area sewer upgrade, which we heard about earlier tonight, sidewalk improvements, broadband investment, revenue replacement, which we just handled, and others, etc.
Okay. Did select board members get all that?
Yep. What we didn't get was whether we voted or not.
You're right,
Oh.
because none of us really said anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
we never voted.
Okay. Well, let's vote again. All those in favor of doing the standard deduction, raise your hand and say aye.
Bye.
All right. I heard that. All those against.
The ayes have it.
Okay. The ayes have it. There we go.
We got it that time.
It's now official. So how do members want to handle this? I know the last time we spoke about this, I think we made the suggestion of maybe coming back with a list of 5 to 10 projects. We were all going to bring projects back. I don't know if board members have done that. I have done that. I have a lot more than 5, but it's just sort of random, sort of just ideas I've had. And I'm happy to present those just as a member of the public to the group, as anyone can in the town, and not have it come as a select board thing. But I don't know if other select board members have a list that they want to add for us to put forward as a select board.
Or criteria.
Or criteria.
That's another way to approach it. For example, with the sidewalks, I think in an earlier conversation, there was discussion that sidewalks, ARPA money should not be used on sidewalks because we have other funding sources. We have town funding that's already budgeted, and we have grants available.
Okay.
Can we put this off till next meeting?
Yeah.
Get that list next meeting,
Yeah.
just so we can move on.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have time for that, right, Val? I mean, they have their next meeting
Oh.
next week, but we have time for
Yeah.
ours. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this was a good opportunity to touch base on it then.
Okay.
All right. Hang on one second. All right, moving on. Item 10.
This can be pretty quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Half of you.
Okay, just want to get a time down here, 2:16, thank you. Item 10, acknowledge receipt of Plank Road neighbors petition expressing concern about a proposed Bristol Trail Network segment. Val?
So hopefully folks had a chance to look at the petition that was submitted to various parties. It's shared with the select board primarily to keep you in the loop because it's addressed to town officials, but it's really not a select board issue. Their concern will be addressed when the Bristol Trail Network goes through the permit process.
So there's a bunch of them here that would just like to be heard, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You stick around for 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Right.
Just wave at the camera.
Here, I've set up your video to start again. Why don't we try to video just so we have video for the recording? I don't know if you can click something there. There we go. Okay.
If whoever's gonna speak could come up to the table.
Sure.
We'll
That'd be great. You have the floor.
move over and give you a spot. Bring a chair.
Yes, I nominated.
Well, all your names are on it, so.
Yeah.
And if folks could introduce themselves.
Yeah.
So Amos Martin, Plank Road. On the screen.
That's all right. It'll find
will
you.
be.
Amos.
It'll find you.
So Valerie, you just stated that you didn't think this was a select board issue until the permit process was followed. The trail was cut, it was put in, it was announced by Porter and Troy via Addison Independent and the town report. So I guess in Front Porch Forum. So we're here looking for clarification. That letter addressed a bunch of issues. And
It's still not a select board item for action. It's the development review board and the permit process.
I think what the group needs to do is just make us aware of their concerns so that when we deal with our other boards and commissions, we know these concerns are here. I think what you're here to do is to inform us of the situation firsthand, so that when we talk with our zoning and planning and
Development
conservation, everybody that's involved, that
Yep.
we're up to speed. What she's saying is that it's not our decision.
okay.
Yeah, it has to go through the zoning process.
We didn't have a decision when they put the first one in from South Street to Firehouse.
Right. The UDR was voted on March 2020, which then stated that you need to go through the permit
Right.
process, and so forth, so.
Then that, if it's denied by the zoning administrator, then it goes in front of the DRB.
DRB,
And yeah, it might have went through that old one might have went through the planning commission before they had DRB, but.
because previously we've read a bunch of minutes, going back years, and it seems like that process was happening at the start of the inception of the Bristol Trail Network, but then it's just fallen off the radar, and it seems like that it's.
Well, the zoning was changed in 2020 that required it. So prior to 2020, permits were not required for the trail system.
The only permit we gave our blessing. We didn't give a permit, we gave our blessing was.
Yeah,
the one
permission
around
over
the town
town
landfill. Town landfill.
Okay.
It's the only one we gave our blessing to.
And
Went around the solar panels.
the old dump trail is what
The
they
old dump
call it.
trail.
Right.
The old dump
So let me ask you guys this question, the old dump trail, they're gonna have to spur off from that to go on to the other property. That means that the town of Bristol will need to pull a permit for that section of trail themselves.
We don't own that property where they want to go now.
Right, but to come off the existing trail to extend. See
Well,
what
so
I'm
the
saying?
existing
Small
trail
segment.
is right on the boundary line, then it wouldn't. I don't know where the
know
exact
that
trail is, so.
I know it runs
can't tell
along,
you.
down over Mount Avon, runs along the old railroad tracks and comes up by the town barn right here.
Right.
Stays on our land.
Yeah,
After
no,
each
no,
nowadays.
So to come off from off your trail on your land, then you'll need, because it's a new trail on town of Bristol property.
If, I assume if that's the case, that.
I would
permit
assume,
application would have been.
I would assume that if it's the Bristol Trail Network, that the town would need a permit for any of the trails. Or would it be the rec club?
Rec club.
It's a rec club.
The rec club, the Bristol Trail Network is a subgroup of the rec club. And they would be the primary applicant, and any affected property owners would need to be co-applicants.
Right.
They would be driving, the Bristol Rec Club / Bristol Trail Network would be the primary drivers of the applications. They would take all the responsibility and all the whatever needs to be done to pull it together and go through the process. And the partners would just need to sign on, which basically gives permission.
Mhm.
And ultimately be responsible for any permit conditions and whatnot, or share responsibility. But that would be how it would go.
So your biggest concern was the process wasn't followed and trail was constructed without the neighbor's knowledge?
Yes, correct.
The trail,
Any neighbor's knowledge.
Any
where,
neighbors
where,
know.
there's a trail,
It goes out through out through the Plank Road.
oh.
It stops behind Christine's property. It stops there because there's a question of property lines.
Mhm.
So we've done some deed research, and the new property owners, it doesn't Plank Road, it stops and does not reach Plank Road, so.
So let me ask you, the people that wanted the trail network through there, they own the whole property all the way through? To that point? I guess.
Yeah, there's one landowner from the old railroad tracks
to that point.
To
To
the
that
back
point.
of your
Back.
property,
So
right?
basically it dead ends at this point because
Yeah.
they can't keep going until they figure out who owns it.
Before we go too far, full disclosure, I am on the rec club board. I don't go to many meetings. I did go last Thursday night. Porter was there from the Bristol Trail Networks, gave us a briefing that they are looking to talk to the neighbors and this landowner, and that's all she said was, I mean, like I said, she is the trail network coordinator, and they were just put under the umbrella of the rec club because it's a recreation.
Mhm.
And she said, I'll fill you in more when we have more meetings with the landowners. And she said, one landowner has approached us about using their property to go across, and that's all she said. But the rec club meeting, the annual meeting is April 28th. Yes, it is. So if you'd like to come and express, I would feel free to, please do.
Yeah, I just, in our letter, I'm assuming you guys all read it, you know, we're not anti-trail, and the trail, we're just community members, and we're pro-community, and this isn't something that you just force down on other community members. It's an invasion of our privacy. It goes, you know, right through 3 of our backyards, pretty much, on the new property owner's property. But again, it seems like an invasion of privacy for us, and we live out of the village for privacy reasons. Right. And so it just seems like that. And if you want more information, the Conservation Commission meeting on November 11th, 2021, it lays it all out and comes to Plank Road, goes down J Drive, then goes up to CTI Tower to Coffins. Their ultimate goal is to get to Bristol Pond. And I think that there's going to be a lot of issues, again, with all those property owners and people out behind Bristol Pond that have camps out there for a reason, for privacy. And you're giving an avenue for people just to get from point A to point B, and I think you're going to have another set of issues.
She did report that their goal is to leave Mountain Street past the school and head up towards Heath Road and go out that way and get all the way to the pond and come back in the other way.
And a
resident
of Heath Road has expressed interest that he does not want it going up there either. And that's a private road, so
rec club meetings are open to the public. I haven't been in over a year, and they asked me to come. I spoke a couple of times.
We're all very concerned about the process and our privacy, the wildlife. There's plenty of wildlife denning out there and stuff. We have plenty of photos, and it'll drive all that out of there. We'll just have squirrels and chipmunks. So again, we have correspondence from the new neighbors that we're going to stop the trail and cover it up and try to find a different route so it didn't impinge on us. But again, this is steps were missed, and we just don't want this to happen to anybody else. We've lost, a bunch of us have lost sleep over there for a few months now.
Yeah.
So
Especially when you see somebody, I won't say they're not on your land, but they're you could be mowing right up to your property like I do, and then someone cuts through the backyard.
Yeah.
And you're going, who's that? I've had high school kids cut through mine from Liberty to Pine. They cut through the back, and I'll say, please go around.
Yeah.
You know, I've got stuff out back in my garage. You can look in, see my stuff, and prying eyes can, hey, let's come back later, so to speak. I hear you.
And I can come up here, but I think ultimately, like you said, at this point, it's just a matter of the process or the holes in the process, potential holes in the process. You know, when we asked the process, there wasn't a clear chain of commands. And I know all of this inner workings is very complex, but it was incredibly hard for somebody to try to understand who reports to who and how it all works. And as much research as we did, I can't imagine anyone else could understand what goes on. So I guess it's just, like you said, the process. We wanted to make sure everyone aware. I don't think that Eric was included on that, but one of our concerns is just that where they're going to pop up on the Plank Road is right there where the culvert comes from.
That crosses right there by the rock, or just
By the rock, by the
And
old
there's
village
about this
line.
much shoulder. That was our concern. In fact, I spoke to you this fall about
you did.
adding to
Adding
see if you
material, yeah,
had
we're gonna-
dirt ever.
Yeah.
we don't want to do that anymore.
But it's just ironic timing that,
Right.
I'm calling him because I'm watching cars go by thinking, oh my God,
Where
somebody's gonna get
walking.
We're thinking
hit.
of Joe Ravacha
Somebody is
walking
gonna get hit. I don't
4
wanna
times
watch
a day.
this.
I've been walking to work
So-
4 times or for the last 3 weeks, I've been walking to work, and you have to step off the road and let cars get by you because they are on their phones. They don't understand traffic, and you're probably hearing this for the first time, but they don't understand that when have a pedestrian in your lane and somebody's coming at you, you have to stop, let that other car, because they have the right of way, then they can get into the other lane and get by you.
That's what it's bad there.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
They
They have 116 when you got a shoulder and they still don't do that.
Yeah, I'm on the road constantly, and it's a nightmare out there. And for the trails that are here for the village people are great. They get people off the sidewalks there, but it's not. I don't think it's a good idea for it to come out that far. And there's a lot of nature trails out there in the state that are underutilized, and these are our neighbors, Jim and Brenda, to the west of us. And we had Jody here. She had to leave, unfortunately, and some other people are out of state, and Stanley couldn't make it. But I think this list of this group it can grow, and will grow if need be. Like I said, some people on J Drive and Heath Road don't think it's a good idea. So,
Okay.
it's
I mean,
unfortunate that
so
it
I'd
went
say-
this way.
I would say thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. It seems like I know that you've been active in terms of the meetings for the Conservation Commission, and I've talked to the chair of that board. So it seems like the right people have been notified, and I see, looking at the correspondence, you've been talking with Chris as well, and the zoning administrator and his office, and going through that process as well. But I think for now, I think on behalf of the board, I sort of thank you for bringing this to our attention. But at the moment, I think you were talking to the right people. But as Val said at the top of the meeting, we can't make any decisions for you or affect change at the moment.
So just a point of clarification, the Conservation Commission reports back to the Select Board on their decisions. So, and that we brought up the conservation part of the piece. So, and ultimately, then I think you guys kind of do have a little bit of say.
Well,
If they report back to you, right?
Well, go on, Joel.
when we appoint, if they're up for reappointment, or we give them funds out of the town funds and the voters vote for it. We can say, no, we don't like the direction they're going, but the voters can still vote that money in. So we're a small part of, we don't make them say, hey, that was a stupid decision you made, so you got to reverse it. That's not us. We can't do that.
Okay.
Because they're an independent board, but we can set the people on the board that we think we can appoint the people that we think are going to do a good job, but they're there for 3 years.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that for the trail systems that are on private property, there's other than through the permit process, there's really very little town oversight, or if some state review is triggered, wetlands or some other thing, but the select board really has no jurisdiction at all over trail developments on private property.
Right. And looking at the correspondence from Chris, he seems to think that there were no violations in terms of how that permit was issued and the history of the parcels. So I'm not sure. I don't know if you'll be continuing the discussion, but you need to continue it with him or I don't know. I guess him.
There was a permit pulled for that?
Looking at the correspondence that you've had with Chris, his last email talked about the permit issued and its history, and he didn't believe that there were any violations.
No, actually, Ian, that the document you're looking at is Kilburn, a Kilburn letter, and that was erroneously added to this agenda.
Okay.
Totally unrelated.
Okay.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention this morning that in my Saturday haze, I inadvertently plugged those two together, and they didn't belong together.
Oh, okay.
It's corrected.
The point we're trying to get across is that it actually touches on two of the things you just said, Valerie, is that we don't believe that the permit was ever pulled, and it is. Some say it's classified as wetland, some say it's not. I guess the state's coming back out to check at that. So
I was gonna say that's a state issue, but yeah,
Right.
so that's beyond even Chris's
It's
purview.
a state issue, and also speaking with the conservation chair, it was her understanding that even if it's deemed in terms of wildlife netting, things like that, it's still, there are no restrictions in terms of trails on areas of that nature. There are trails throughout wildlife areas throughout Vermont, and so there aren't restrictions. It's a very small subset of classification that prevents trails, but mostly in Vermont, it's very broad. So even if it comes back and it is a wildlife area, that doesn't prevent the use of trails in that area.
just because you can doesn't mean you should.
I didn't know there was. I thought that the only trails we have starts here on South Street, goes around the back, behind the creamy stand, down through up over the fire station, comes out to the sidewalk, goes out, goes over by the Mount Age sign, walks down behind out behind where Mount Age cross country runs, goes down to the landfill. What's that cross country used it for years? That's what they hooked onto, and then comes up by the town barn and basically I thought it ended.
No,
So did
they continually want to continue.
No, I know they want to continue, but I didn't know they were cutting.
No, there's one from Lord's Fair Rock to South Street, supposedly, as well.
Yeah, I think that's a
Reading the minutes, it looks like a landowner stopped that.
Yeah, the old, I want to say, it's not Carter, who?
Carpenter.
The old Carpenter property.
Carpenter. Yeah, they stopped that.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's duly noted that we need to make sure that it's been brought to our attention, and we need to make sure the rules are followed. That's.
Okay.
the trail isn't.
Thank you very
open,
much.
but you cut the trail and put it in last fall, so. It's a very nice trail, right, Jim?
Yeah, it looks like it's been there for years. It's amazing.
Well, we used to drive a snow machine up from down across where the kids slide, by Buzzy's Field there, and come up Old Windy. We used to, when we were kids, we used to come up through there and drive cows up from there. That used to be Rawls' day pasture.
It's pretty
When I
darn
was
wet down
10
there
and 12
now.
years old, we used to run cows across North Street back to the farm. Yeah, so been a long time.
Ian, thank
since
you
I've
for
done
your
it.
time. Valerie.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing
Thank you for
attention.
bringing that attention.
We're not anti-trail.
Well, I
Well,
watched.
sorry,
it.
citizens.
trail.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thanks for being patient, and waiting.
Yeah.
Yes.
You want to spare chairs or you
No.
don't?
Yeah.
For those of
Okay,
us in
moving.
Zoom land, it's hard for us to see who else is in the room with you to know that
Right.
there were other people waiting like that.
Hey.
We did have
I
a
got a
couple of eight.
sign-in sheet.
We probably got it at 8. We're here.
We'll need that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Item 11, appointment or reappointment of town officers and representatives.
Yes, this should be pretty quick. Let me, I have an updated spreadsheet. We have some new people who agreed to, not new people, but people that agreed to be reappointed. Alex Smith to the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
We learned that Lloyd Dyke does not want to be reappointed to the Planning Commission. Let me see if I can share this. Let's see.
Yeah.
We have two vacancies for the PC now.
So, yeah, so the Conservation Commission is all set.
Good.
Lloyd Dyke, and yes, Tom Wallace and Lloyd Dyke.
Okay, so 2 open spots there.
2 new open spots. Melissa said yes.
Good.
And Randy Sargent said yes for the
Okay.
Equipment Committee, and I think that's it.
I have an update in terms of Maple Broadband, the Communications Union District. Dan Sonneborn, he'll be continue to be our delegate, and I'm working on the alternate. Mark Gibson is our current alternate, and I hopefully will convince him to continue.
Okay, that's good to know.
And we need to sign that document at some point.
Right, I need to put it on letterhead, put the names in, and then the chair would sign the document.
Yep, we can do that.
So who are the, so Sonneborn?
Sonneborn, who's currently our current delegate, he'll remain, and then Mark Gibson was our alt, and he's got a few of the things he's working on, so he may step off, but I'll see if I can convince him, or I'll try to find another.
Now, how many people have we not heard from?
Let's see.
I mean, I guess my ultimate question is, you know, can we call them? Can somebody call them?
We only haven't heard back from Tom Wells. I talked with Chris about that today. I sent Tom at least 2 emails to both of his email addresses and haven't heard back.
Yeah, have Chris call him.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Or
Have
talk to
Chris
Carol.
call him.
Okay.
Anybody else?
We might want to consider a motion to accept these folks that agreed to be reappointed.
So moved.
Okay. Okay, motion is second. Further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries.
Super.
Okay, we're skipping 12, right?
Skipping 12, 13,
yeah.
authorized accounts payable warrant, any liquor licenses. I think.
I think we
Sharon
just
said
stay
there was
5
one.
minutes.
We're all fine. What was 12?
The minutes.
Oh.
Liquor license, accounts payable is $69,532.31. Nothing out of the ordinary. The only liquor license we have is for Tillerman, which is the Old Mary's.
Yep.
Was that in there? Figure I signed.
Yeah, that was in there.
Said sign. Good.
Okay, I'll come in and sign those tomorrow. Select Board Roundtable. Peeker, start with you.
I'm good.
Michelle?
Okay, 2 things, couple things. Val, the lights on the bridge, I saw
Yeah.
your emails on those, so I'll give you the details. If you're heading out of town, the first light on the south side of the first bridge is out, and the last light on the north side of the bridge is out. And then the second bridge, the whole light pole on the first light is gone. But
Right.
that's been gone for
I
years.
was gonna say,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
She only thinks there's 1 light out. There's really a total of 3.
Okay.
And the other question is, has anybody noticed the new signs that the state put up for
Yes.
Mountain
they're
Health
awful.
and that?
They're
Well, did you
absolutely
see how
awful.
they spelled Munsell Ave? Are we changing how we spell Munsell Ave?
I'd like to know.
It's Muncill, and I'm like, there,
I have
and
not seen that.
it's both on the south side of town or
Well, there's
west side of
one-
town, and east side of town.
There's one on the north side too.
Yeah.
I
I was
don't know,
like,
I didn't look to see what it said. but-
somebody needs to contact the state and say,
Yeah.
you need to have somebody figure out how to spell, but they do. I agree with you, Ian. They look awful. They look like
Yeah, right. My wife mentioned it to me. She was driving back from somewhere and said, "What are those new signs?" And then I looked one way. I didn't see the Munsell one, but I saw Mountain Health. But yeah, they're barely legible. I have no
it
idea
says
how those
Munsell
were
and
approved.
Pine, Mucill, and I'm like, that's not how we spell Munsell, is it?
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get
Maybe the way I spell it,
They
but
don't
it's not the way everybody else spells
So
it.
that's my two
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, that's terrible. Okay, Darla.
I don't believe I have anything tonight.
Okay, Jill.
Just while Eric's here, are we gonna have a road trip this year?
It's on the calendar.
I hope
It is.
so.
I didn't check the whole.
Yeah,
thing.
we don't have a date, but it's on the calendar.
And something I'd like to see us work on is, and maybe Bruce can fill me in because he does get grants and Meredith. Do you guys just get those and barely have to turn around real quick? Because we get sometimes we get them, oh, you gotta have a decision by Wednesday. Like the last one, I asked a few questions, well, we gotta have a decision by Wednesday.
Sometimes they're fast.
Sometimes they.
Okay. All right, just would like to get more lead time if we could, that's all. That's all I
You'd
have.
like more lead time too, wouldn't you?
And I'd like to,
Right, though, it's one thing
Mr.
for us
Chairman,
to
I'd
say
like to
yes.
see us have a time limit on select board meetings, 10 o'clock. We're done by 10. We're not-
Good luck.
No new
What
business
make
after
it-
No
10.
new business after 10. These
I'll
meetings
try to
some
make
nights
that
go to
happen.
midnight, you know.
Boy, the old chair never did that.
Thanks,
Oh,
Joel.
I got
I
it.
have nothing. Val, administrator's report.
No, not that I can think of. No, I don't think I have anything to add to the written report.
Hey,
But I did want to draw attention to the items under other business. Michelle already referenced the communication about the bridge lamps, which I think is good news after all this time. I thought we had been told, I'd been told that we'd been told that they couldn't deal with the lights for various reasons, and I don't know that the V-Trans was aware of the ones that were out. But anyway, so it's hopeful news. Just draw attention to the water allocation letter for 73 Maple Street. The series that the Porter Knight is sponsoring about disrupting racism on it's being held on March 20. Well, anyway, it's in the information. Information about Homeland Security, cybersecurity warning guidance. The newsletter from the Addison County Regional Planning Commission, but also an interesting email and proposition from a citizen who's encouraging municipalities to plant sunflowers in various areas of the town. And if folks have a chance, it might be worth a read and to think about doing. And I responded back to him about the supply. Is there enough supply of sunflower seeds, either locally or through catalogs, if with this idea? And he replied back that there are resources. But anyway, interesting concept. Just wanted to mention that.
Oh, I did have one thing I forgot to mention. I don't know if folks are aware that Mary Jane Broughton, who was a longtime kindergarten teacher here and mentor to a lot of early educators, passed away last week. Her service was Saturday. And she was a good friend and just a good community member. She and her husband moved out to Cornwall just a year or two ago. And Mary Jane passed away. So just wanted to acknowledge that.
They moved out to her folks' place.
Yeah.
Thanks, Darla.
Mary was nice.
Let's see. We've responded to that business executive session.
Now, before we go into executive session, do we have any more business with Eric? Or do we feel that we closed the loop on that subject?
He's nodding like crazy.
Yeah, does he need to have his input on the sidewalks?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Huh?
sidewalk info.
sidewalks.
Sidewalk info.
Oh, right,
With
right.
Eric.
So we got that. And Bruce would like to visit with us.
Yeah. Bruce is
I
there.
don't have it. I don't have the bids.
I
I didn't print
guess,
them out.
Valerie, my question is on the bids.
Yes.
On the bids, my question.
We're in.
Okay.
not
Hold
in
on.
executive
We're not in
session.
executive session.
Oh.
Yeah, we're not in executive
We're
session
not.
yet. Hold on.
Oh, that's right.
So yes, we need Eric and we need Bruce. So we're all set.
Right.
So Michelle.
So do we need to do another motion, Val, or can we just continue?
So I would, yes, we need to do another motion.
Okay, and so we're inviting both Eric and Bruce, right?
Yes,
Correct.
please.
Okay, I make a motion, we go back into executive session to discuss personnel matters, no, just personnel matters and contract
Personnel and,
negotiation
yeah,
per 1 VSA section 313, and we invite both Eric and Bruce to attend.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
everybody else is excused.
Aye.
All those against,
Hey,
nay.
Dennis. All right.
Motion carries in executive session. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Anthony. Thanks,
Good
Sharon.
night, everybody.